Grace Flowers ruffled Jason Lawrence's hair, smiling. Mother, you're the one who complains of tiredness every day, being lazy, and needing me to push you. How embarrassing. Jason Lawrence retorted without hesitation. Grace Flowers, slightly embarrassed by the child's words, touched her face. It seemed he had a point, but she couldn't be blamed. The child was like a perpetual motion machine, tirelessly cultivating inner strength and practicing swordsmanship all day. She felt she was already putting in 12 times her usual effort, having never trained so diligently. You two practice every day? Justin Lawrence had only heard they stayed in their room all day, except for meals, unaware they were training. We train to the point of near death. But, thankfully, it's paying off. Look at my move today, wasn't my technique impressive? Grace Flowers, recalling the awe she inspired at the flowers, couldn't help but boast, chin held high. Your technique, it seems you've surpassed the mid-6th stage. In the great Gene dynasty, you're considered a top expert, very impressive. Justin Lawrence tweaked Grace Flowers' nose, chuckling. He rarely saw her so prideful, it made her so adorable he wanted to hug and kiss her. From now on, you'll behave, or else, humph. Grace Flowers let out a sinister chuckle laced with threat. Or else, I'm at your mercy every night, is that it? Justin Lawrence tightened his embrace, pulling her closer. You lecher, Jason Lawrence is here, behave yourself. Feeling his arousal and smelling his scent, Grace Flowers knew his intentions, blushing and suppressing her desire, she scolded him softly. Someone. Justin Lawrence called softly. Your Highness. A guard appeared silently, like a phantom. Take care of the young master, don't let him disturb me. Justin Lawrence leaned down to coax Jason Lawrence. Justin, your mother and I have important matters to attend to. Go rest with the guard, we'll see each other tomorrow. Without waiting for Grace Flowers to speak, Justin Lawrence swept her up and carried her towards their prepared bedroom under the cover of night. The guard, watching his lustful prince carry the princess away, knew tonight's battle would be fierce. Young master, this way please. The guard addressed Jason Lawrence respectfully, not treating him any differently due to his age. Heavens, father is truly impetuous. A man who can't control himself will be henpecked. It seems father is destined to be oppressed by mother for life. Jason Lawrence watched Justin Lawrence depart, shaking his head with an adult-like sigh of resignation and sympathy. The guard's face paled, nearly spitting blood. The young master knew far too much. Even about adult matters in the bedroom. And he understood marital dynamics. Wasn't this a bit too precocious? Uncle Guard, why are you so shocked? Do you find my words too insightful? Jason Lawrence, turning back to the still stunned guard, asked with a hint of arrogance. This, young master, your words are indeed insightful. However, such insightful words should be shared only with subordinates like myself, never in front of others. The guard wiped away cold sweat, unsure how to handle this precocious and sharp-witted child. All right, then we're best friends, and best friends should be honest with each other. Don't worry, I'll try to come up with more insightful words to teach you. Jason Lawrence nodded readily, speaking cheerfully. Young master, the guard's stern face flushed with embarrassment, seemingly struggling to speak. What's wrong? Do you have something to tell me? It's okay, say whatever you want. Even if it's not insightful enough, I won't laugh at you. We're best friends, aren't we? Jason Lawrence encouraged, patting the squatting guard's shoulder with a magnanimous air. I'm only 18 years old, so, young master, could you please not call me uncle? The guard finished with difficulty, his face crimson. But the thought of being called uncle by the young master made him want to cry. He was only 18, unmarried and childless, at most the young master could call him brother, being called uncle was truly hard to accept. Oh, it seems you've aged rather quickly. So, from now on, I'll call you Uncle Peter Parker, okay? Jason Lawrence, with a hint of doubt, seriously, carefully, and attentively assessed the young guard's face, reaching this conclusion, but still readily negotiable about not calling the guard uncle anymore. No, young master, just call me Peter Parker. The guard, hearing he was growing up fast, took it to mean he was old, practically on death's door. Among the guards, he was recognized as the youngest, so how did he become old in the young master's eyes? All right, Peter Parker it is, friends don't need so many formalities. Let's go, time for bed. Before you sleep, you must think carefully about some refined words to tell me tomorrow. Jason Lawrence didn't argue with Peter Parker, rubbing his eyes, his steps already a little unsteady, seemingly very sleepy. The guard hurriedly reached out and embraced Jason Lawrence, and the moment he was nestled in his arms, Jason Lawrence closed his eyes dreamily. Peter Parker looked at the adorable sleeping face of the little child, and couldn't help but shake his head with a wry smile. Only when asleep did the young master resemble a child. So as not to disturb the sleeping Jason Lawrence, the guard walked very slowly, letting the little one in his arms sleep soundly as if in bed. Meanwhile, elsewhere, things between Justin Lawrence and Grace Flowers were proceeding with considerable passion. Chapter 40, Is it all right for the two of you to ignore me like this? The next day, Justin Lawrence's family of 3 woke up early for breakfast. Fiona Flowers, confined to bed and unable to walk easily, didn't join them for breakfast. With Fiona Flowers not there chattering, the breakfast atmosphere felt much quieter. Bella White, busy caring for Fiona Flowers, also skipped breakfast, leaving only Henry Flowers and Hoa Chi Tri, father and son, waiting. After breakfast, Grace Flowers bid farewell to Henry Flowers and boarded the carriage back to Serenity Prince Mansion. Inside the carriage, Jason Lawrence sat beside Grace Flowers, his small face serious, looking at her as if he had something important to say. Speak, if you have any brilliant ideas, just say them all. Mother is all ears. Having spent some time with Jason Lawrence, she understood him quite well. Seeing his serious expression, she knew the little tyke definitely had something on his mind. Mother, do you feel that you and father are neglecting me? Jason Lawrence furrowed his brows, his adorable little face filled with reproach. Oh, we treat you like the apple of our eye, how could we neglect you? Son, you can speak carelessly about food, but not about other things. Exaggerating unimportant matters won't make them bigger, it'll just make you a crybaby. Grace Flowers felt wronged by Jason Lawrence's accusation. She doted on this little fellow every day, yet he still accused her of neglect. Where was the justice? Look, last night you didn't return to the mansion and didn't even send someone to inform me. As your son, I worry too. And you changed your itinerary without telling me. This isn't just neglect, it's disrespect. Seeing that Grace Flowers not only didn't apologize but also spoke to him like he was a child, Jason Lawrence voiced a harsher criticism. Grace Flowers rubbed her temples with a headache, looking up at Justin Lawrence with an expression that said, Your son, you handle him. Justin Lawrence chuckled, turning Jason Lawrence around, his face gentle and coaxing. It was our fault for not informing you in time, father apologizes. Next time, if there's any change in plans, we'll let you know immediately, all right? To make amends, father will give you a training room. That way, you and mother won't have to practice martial arts in the cramped bedroom anymore. What do you think? All right. Mother and I are dying practicing martial arts in the bedroom. There's no room to move at all. Jason Lawrence immediately clapped his hands in delight, nodding repeatedly. Why didn't you two practice in the courtyard before? It's much more spacious out there. Justin Lawrence asked, puzzled. With people coming and going outside, how can we focus on practicing martial arts? Grace Flowers recalled the secret of cultivating internal energy, which required absolute quiet and no disturbances, otherwise, one could easily succumb to chi deviation. I'll have the steward prepare a spacious area as a training ground for you two. When I have free time, I'll give you some pointers on your martial arts practice. Justin Lawrence felt that since the little fellow started practicing martial arts, his body had become increasingly agile and his physique much better. Martial arts training had many benefits, not only for self-defense but also for improving health, so he strongly supported Grace Flower's training. What level has your martial arts cultivation reached? Grace Flowers asked curiously. Justin Lawrence had never revealed his martial arts skills, except for the one time he used his internal energy to turn a bucket of cold water into hot water for her bath. At that time, she was astonished by his powerful internal force. Don't worry, I'm qualified to guide you too in martial arts training. Justin Lawrence said with a smile. You're not that legendary mysterious expert who surpassed the 9th level, are you? Grace Flowers raised an eyebrow, teasing. I think the mysterious expert from decades ago, even if eternally youthful, couldn't be as young and handsome as I am now. Justin Lawrence touched his face, giving Grace Flowers a captivating, devilishly charming smile. Tisk, narcissistic. Grace Flowers rolled her eyes at Justin Lawrence, but still slightly dazed by his alluring appearance, she quickly focused her gaze, preventing herself from being charmed by this flirt. Jason Lawrence raised his hand, wanting to get his parents' attention. When both Justin Lawrence and Grace Flowers noticed him, he proudly said, Father, Mother, I practiced martial arts all day yesterday and feel my internal energy has increased quite a bit. No one taught you, so how did you practice? Justin Lawrence was very puzzled about this. He hadn't hired any martial arts masters to teach them, yet seeing Grace Flowers' martial arts cultivation improve so dramatically in just a few days, it definitely wasn't from self-taught exploration. There must have been expert guidance for such rapid progress. Because we have a martial arts manual. Jason Lawrence quickly replied. Martial arts manual? Justin Lawrence looked towards Grace Flowers, a questioning glint in his eyes. Grace Flowers slapped her forehead in exasperation. She should have told Jason Lawrence not to casually mention to others that they had a martial arts manual. Fortunately, it was Justin Lawrence she was talking to. Yes, the martial arts manual I brought from my family home. Justin and I usually follow what's written in it. Hearing that it was a martial arts manual Grace Flowers brought from her family home, Justin Lawrence didn't find it strange. After all, the Flowers were the foremost martial arts noble family in the Jianhu, and their treasure vault was rumored to contain tens of thousands of martial arts manuals, all extremely valuable and rare. During their conversation, the carriage entered the main gate of Serenity Prince Mansion and stopped at the main building. After getting off the carriage, Justin Lawrence excused himself, citing poor health and the need to rest, and led Grace Flowers and Jason Lawrence directly towards the bedroom. Upon reaching the bedroom, Grace Flowers retrieved 3 manuals and handed them to Justin Lawrence. Inside were some specialized martial arts terms that she, as a layperson, truly didn't understand. Even with the memories of the original body providing some foundation, it was still difficult to fully grasp the profound meanings within these manuals. She had always thought of waiting for the mysterious person who gifted the manuals to appear and guide her training, but waiting for someone with an unknown whereabouts was less efficient than consulting Justin Lawrence. After receiving and glancing through the 3 ancient manuals, a look of astonishment appeared on Justin Lawrence's face. He sat up straight, no longer displaying his previous casual demeanor. With a serious and cautious expression, he flipped through the manuals, growing more shocked with each page. These were stolen imperial manuals. How did they end up in the hands of the Flowers? Are you certain you brought these from your family home? Justin Lawrence looked at Grace Flowers, his expression serious, as if her answer was of utmost importance. What's wrong? Is something amiss? Grace Flowers also realized that these 3 manuals must hold significant implications, so she became serious as well, sitting down beside Justin Lawrence and asking. These 3 secret manuals are connected to a theft 15 years ago. If the Flowers possessed them, they're likely involved, and could face extermination. Justin Lawrence's expression was grave. Who else knows she has these manuals? Only you. 3 years ago, a mysterious person delivered them to my chambers. I don't know who they were. Grace Flowers recounted the manual's origin from memory, then anxiously asked, "Tell me about this theft. I know these manuals are valuable, but are they truly worth extermination?" Justin Lawrence nodded, recounting the theft to Grace Flowers. The manuals were treasures of the great Jin dynasty's imperial family, stolen 15 years prior. The thief, possessing exceptional martial arts skills, bypassed the treasury's defenses, remaining undetected until the emperor's routine inspection the following day. This theft of precious martial arts manuals shook the nation. The enraged emperor offered a reward and issued a secret decree: the thief's entire clan would be exterminated upon capture. Despite 15 years and vast resources, the thief and manuals vanished without a trace. Did you see the mysterious person's face? Their age? Were they male or female? Justin Lawrence rapidly questioned. Their build suggested male, but a cloak concealed their face. They never spoke, so I couldn't judge their age by voice. Grace Flowers recalled a vague impression of a tall figure, at least 6 feet, certainly male. How many times did you meet them? Justin Lawrence frowned, believing Grace's innocent eyes and unawareness of the manual's significance. Perhaps 3 or 4 times. They came at midnight, clarifying parts of the manuals I didn't understand. Grace Flowers strained her memory. They were strange, never speaking, using gestures instead. I don't know if they were mute or concealing their identity. Justin Lawrence frowned deeper, examining the manuals. These invaluable treasures, stolen from the imperial family, were now a dangerous burden for Grace, threatening her life with the slightest misstep. Fortunately, they hadn't practiced publicly, or the consequences would extend beyond Grace Flowers, endangering the Flowers and Serenity Prince Mansion. These manuals must remain secret. Jason, remember, tell no one about them. Justin Lawrence warned Jason Lawrence. Yes, Jason won't tell. Jason Lawrence nodded seriously, his small face reflecting his firm commitment to secrecy. I'll quickly point out the key aspects of these manuals. Memorize them, and you can gradually master them later. These 3 manuals must be destroyed immediately. Absolutely no one else can discover them. Justin Lawrence decided instantly. Loose lips sink ships, and as long as they possessed these manuals, discovery was inevitable. He had to eliminate this threat before it came to light. Seriously? Why destroy something so valuable? Passing it down to future generations would be a good deed. Grace Flowers said, her face full of regret. Although she knew Justin Lawrence's decision to destroy the manuals was the safest course of action, she still felt it was a pity. Do you have any other way to guarantee that no one will discover these 3 manuals in your possession? Justin Lawrence countered. He had studied these manuals since childhood, their contents etched into his memory. Even without the physical copies, he could reproduce them verbatim. Fine. I just have a few points I don't understand. Tell me about them, and tonight you can destroy the manuals. Jason and I have memorized the contents. We can practice even without looking at them. Grace Flowers shrugged. Her own life was more important. Playing the saint and sacrificing herself for posterity wasn't something she could do. All right, the sooner they're destroyed, the safer we are. Justin Lawrence pondered for a moment, then nodded in agreement. He told Grace Flowers, tell me what you don't understand. He had mastered these manuals since the age of 8. Guiding Grace Flowers would be child's play. Here, I don't understand what it's saying at all. Take a look. Grace Flowers pulled out a book, already marked at a certain page, and showed it to Justin Lawrence. Jason Lawrence also drew closer, listening intently to Justin Lawrence's explanation. As he explained meticulously, he looked at Grace Flowers and Jason Lawrence, a smile unconsciously gracing his lips. It was the first time these two, pretending to be mother and son, had listened so attentively to him. A powerful sense of satisfaction welled up within him. Chapter 41, Manager of the Inner Court. By the time Justin Lawrence had answered all their questions, it was already noon. Grace Flowers stretched. Back in her school days, she had never listened to a lecture so attentively. Yet, in this unfamiliar time and space, she had unexpectedly become a well-behaved student. Oh, right. You two don't have swords yet, do you? I'll go prepare swords for you. This sword technique is very suitable for women and children to practice. Justin Lawrence flipped to the swordsmanship section and said. Ah, now that you mention it, I think someone anonymously paid 1,000 gold taels to have a pair of Dark Legacy swords made for Justin and me at John's weapons shop. I'll get them for you to see. Grace Flowers suddenly remembered the Dark Legacy swords, stood up, went to the head of the bed, brought out the sword box, and placed it on the table. Justin Lawrence opened the sword box, picked up the larger sword, and drew it from its scabbard. A cold, sharp light flashed, dazzling the eyes. He praised, "It's a good sword, worth a city, and very suitable for a woman to use." Then, he opened the smaller sword box and nodded in satisfaction as well. This sword was also specially made for a child. These are clearly the Dark Legacy swords made specifically for Justin and me. I suspected before that you had them made for us, but I thought if you wanted to give us swords, you wouldn't need to be so secretive about it. You could have just given them to us directly. So, I dismissed the idea that the mysterious gift giver was you. Grace Flowers said, frowning. Indeed, it wasn't me. Justin Lawrence shook his head, sheathing his sword and pondering deeply. Tell me, do you think the person who gifted this sword is the same one who gave me the manual? If not, is there a connection between them? If not, how could anyone know I practice swordsmanship? Everyone who knows me thinks I'm a martial arts cripple, they'd never gift me a sword. Grace Flowers speculated, if it truly was the same person, what connection did this person have with the one who stole the manual from the Imperial Palace? Furthermore, if it is the same person, could it be the very expert who stole the manual from the palace? Think carefully. From childhood until now, has anyone shown particular interest in you? Justin Lawrence asked pensively. After visiting the Flowers yesterday, he knew this young lady had been completely disregarded, practically suffering all sorts of hardships. Moreover, for over a decade, he'd never heard of anything special about the Flowers' eldest daughter. How could this mysterious person have noticed her? Let me think. Grace Flowers furrowed her brow, searching the original host's memories. There seemed to be no noteworthy individuals, only memories of Bella White and her daughter, along with Henry Flowers' concubines, bullying her. There were also segments about Philip Bennett and Hoa Chi Tri. Now, it seemed the original host's social circle was truly simple. Furthermore, she had no noteworthy achievements from childhood onward. Moreover, the person in the portrait accompanying the sword wasn't the original host, but her. Analyzing this, the mysterious gift giver must have intended the sword for her. It seems there's no one. Grace Flowers shook her head. The complex inner relationships were making her dizzy. She needed to sort them out clearly. The manual was gifted 3 years ago, before she arrived in this time. But the sword was ordered 3 months ago at the Tryon family's weapons shop, intended for her. 3 months ago, she hadn't arrived either. This meant the gift giver of the sword and the manual could very well be the same person. So, the one who gifted the sword, if not possessing prophetic abilities, must be like her, from the modern era. But who could it be? Don't overthink it. I'll send someone to the Tryon family's weapons shop to inquire and see if we can find any clues. Justin Lawrence soothed, stroking Grace Flowers' furrowed brow. I've already asked the shopkeeper, but he didn't know anything. Grace Flowers shook her head. It was even connected to the theft 15 years ago, making the matter even more complex and puzzling. Leave it to me. You should focus on practicing your martial arts. Justin Lawrence carefully stored the manual, speaking with a smile. "Oh, right, is there any news about the Phoenix Dragon Goblet? Has it been found?" Grace Flowers inquired. She increasingly felt like she'd fallen into a prearranged trap in this time, unknowingly stepping into it. It seemed she truly needed to find the Phoenix Dragon Goblet and return quickly for everything to become clear. However, if someone had deliberately set this trap, they naturally wouldn't let her escape easily. And the Phoenix Dragon Goblet certainly wouldn't be easy to find. As expected, Justin Lawrence shook his head, replying, "There are no leads yet, but I've sent people to investigate." Grace Flowers had anticipated this answer. Since she was mentally prepared, she didn't feel disappointed. Footsteps sounded outside. Grace Flowers put the sword box away, figuring a servant was coming to summon them for a meal. Your Highness, the midday meal is ready." Ruby Willow knocked softly on the door, calling in a low voice. "Let's go eat." Justin Lawrence stood up and put away the secret manual, just in case someone entered the room and discovered it, causing unnecessary trouble. Grace Flowers nodded, stood up, took Jason Lawrence's hand with one hand, and let Justin Lawrence hold her other hand as they walked towards the door. Just as they stepped out the door and saw Ruby Willow obediently waiting outside, Grace Flowers suddenly remembered that she hadn't told Justin Lawrence about Susie Green. "Oh, I almost forgot to tell you. My personal maid who served me at my mother's house, Susie Green, I've told her to come to the prince's mansion to continue serving me. She should arrive at Serenity Prince Mansion in the next 2 days. Tell the steward, if Susie Green comes looking for me, have him bring her to me." Grace Flowers spoke as they walked. Nanny Wang, Uncle Lee, and the others had left the Flowers with her today. Susie Green thought it would be convenient to go back to her hometown with Nanny Wang to pay respects to her foster mother, so she didn't immediately follow Grace Flowers back to the prince's mansion. After paying her respects, she would come to Serenity Prince Mansion to find her. Ahem. A small matter like taking in a maid, the princess consort can decide on her own. From now on, you are the mistress of the prince's mansion, you can manage the internal affairs. Justin Lawrence coughed lightly and said. Grace Flowers suddenly felt pressured. Serenity Prince Mansion wasn't small. Although Justin Lawrence didn't have any concubines, so there wouldn't be any fighting between the wife and concubines, a point Grace Flowers was very grateful for, as Justin Lawrence's feigned illness prevented him from taking concubines, saving her a lot of trouble, but there were hundreds of servants in Serenity Prince Mansion, and their work was complex. She really didn't have the energy to manage the household affairs of such a large family. Well, let's keep things as they are. Let the steward manage the internal affairs of the mansion. Grace Flowers hastily pushed away the responsibility she didn't want to deal with. She was only here temporarily to find the Phoenix Dragon Goblet, and sooner or later she would have to leave. There was no need for Serenity Prince Mansion to change anything for her. Do you want to be a princess consort who stays cooped up inside, little lass? Justin Lawrence chuckled. He had only spoken casually, knowing this lass wasn't interested in power. If he let her manage the internal affairs of the prince's mansion, she definitely wouldn't do it. Of course, who wants to shoulder such responsibilities? I'm not a fool. Grace Flowers nodded and snorted softly. Wasn't this just unnecessary trouble? In the future, the entire Serenity Prince Mansion will be yours. If you don't manage it, watch out for other women coming to compete with you. Seeing Grace Flowers discard the management of Serenity Prince Mansion like trash, Justin Lawrence couldn't help but sigh. The princess consort he married truly wasn't greedy for wealth or power, only interested in his damned antiques. Every day, she had to go to his treasure vault to touch those antiques, and once inside, she wouldn't come out. This little lass cared more about antiques than he did. He was starting to develop a hostile attitude towards antiques. Other women can have it if they want. You just need to give me all the antiques to manage. Grace Flowers raised an eyebrow, her eyes gleaming at the thought of the antiques. Every night she went treasure hunting, she could find treasures she had seen in history books. The greatest joy of coming to this world was being able to see with her own eyes many treasures she wouldn't have dared to dream of before, and now she could touch them with her own hands. It was a truly delightful surprise. Little disciple, you truly show no regard for your husband. It seems tonight I must teach you a proper lesson, so you can truly feel my presence. Justin Lawrence frowned, his heart heavy with displeasure. He was used to overlooking others, not being overlooked himself, especially not by a woman who held his interest. Tisk, with your nightly enthusiasm, you'll end up dying in bed sooner or later. Grace Flowers shot Justin Lawrence an annoyed glance. Fortunately, her internal energy cultivation had greatly enhanced her physique and constitution. Even after being exhausted by his nightly activities, she could dispel the fatigue with a bit of morning meditation, restoring her vitality. She used to wonder how Justin Lawrence never seemed to tire, but now she understood, a profound internal energy could withstand such torment. Ahem, who curses their own husband like that? This little disciple truly dared to say anything, and with a straight face, too. If it weren't for her clumsiness in bed, he would have mistaken her for a seasoned veteran in the affairs of the heart. Grace Flowers glared at Justin Lawrence. Every night, exhausted and deprived of rest, she longed to curse his boundless energy, but she dared not utter the words. If she did, he would surely pin her down to prove just how potent he was. After the midday meal, Justin Lawrence instructed the steward to prepare a training ground for Grace Flowers, then boarded his carriage and departed the manor. Grace Flowers crossed her arms, watching as the carriage disappeared into the distance. Justin Lawrence came and went with such haste every day. After spending last night at the Flowers, his work must have piled up considerably. She didn't know where he went, but she knew it wasn't the Imperial Palace. He always went to some unknown place. According to Ruby Willow, the frail Justin Lawrence sought out a divine physician daily for treatments and tonics. When asked who this physician was or where they practiced, Ruby Willow claimed ignorance. Using the excuse of seeking medical treatment, who knew what he was truly up to? This Justin Lawrence seemed busier than the current emperor. Well, never mind him. She needed to focus on finding the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. ### Chapter 42, How Could It Be You? Justin Lawrence tugged Grace Flowers' sleeve. What's up? Jade Flowers turned her head and looked down at James Lawrence. Mother, let's practice martial arts this morning, Justin Lawrence said expectantly. He'd heard Justin Lawrence explain what he hadn't understood before, and now he was eager to practice. This afternoon, you won't be practicing martial arts. I plan to go out on a trip. Grace Flowers couldn't help but smile. All right, I'll go with Mother too. Justin Lawrence found the street markets in this time and space very interesting. It was completely different from modern street markets. There were so many strange gadgets here. Yes, Mother probably has to go out and do something. Be good and don't ask to go out and play, okay? We might also be able to find clues about the Dragon Phoenix Cup. After all, the Dragon Phoenix Cup is very likely to appear. Yes, Mother, rest assured, Jason will be very obedient and won't cause trouble for Mother. Justin Lawrence nodded vigorously, raising his small hand to swear an oath. All right, Mother, I trust you. Grace Flowers looked at the adorable little boy who swore he was very well behaved and smiled. After telling Ruby Willow to prepare the carriage, she went straight to the market. The market streets were crowded with people coming and going, making it a bustling and lively scene. Grace Flowers led Justin Lawrence straight to the tea house where she had inquired about the current situation of the Jin dynasty with the storyteller. Because it was past lunchtime, there weren't many people in the tea house, only a few customers resting on their way. And because there weren't many people, the storyteller hadn't seen Grace Flowers checking the tea house for a whole week, thinking that maybe the storyteller wouldn't come to set up a storytelling stall today, and was about to leave when she saw Jade Flowers, and he hurriedly came to greet her. Girl, I recognize you. Come in and sit down quickly. Come in and sit down. The waiter immediately recognized the girl who was so generous last time, and he was also very impressed with the cute little baby the girl was holding. Little brother, isn't that storyteller coming to the tea house to tell stories today? Jade Flowers didn't move. She planned to go to other tea houses and restaurants to see if there were other storytellers if this one didn't come. Yes, yes. Sir, you just finished speaking. There aren't many customers right now. Please come down and rest. The waiter in the tea house quickly replied, then asked clearly, Girl, you need to see the gentleman. What's the matter? Did he come here a while ago? Sit down for a while, and I'll call him later. Grace Flowers nodded and followed the waiter to where she had sat before. Girl, have you had lunch yet? Do you want to eat? The waiter asked enthusiastically. No need, bring me a pot of good tea, the best tea in your tea house. Grace Flowers replied. All right, wait a moment, I'll be right there. The waiter immediately replied happily, then turned to prepare the tea. After Justin Lawrence was carried onto the chair by Grace Flowers and the food was served, he swung his little legs, turned his head and saw the duck neck on the next table, and said with a craving, Mother, I want to eat duck neck. Come on. This is the first time I've eaten this kind. It's delicious. Didn't you just have lunch? How can you still eat? Grace Flowers laughed. It turned out that children were so gluttonous. Duck neck has no meat, it's just a taste, I can definitely eat it. Justin Lawrence looked at the duck neck with wide eyes, unable to look away. The waiter brought a pot of tea, placed it on the table, filled Jade Flowers and James Lawrence's cups, and placed them in front of them. Second brother, please add a duck neck. Grace Flowers said to the waiter. All right, we'll get it right away. The waiter replied and walked quickly down the aisle with the empty tray. The duck neck was quickly brought up. Jade Flowers pushed the duck neck in front of James Lawrence and said with a smile, Little glutton, here's your duck neck. Eat slowly, don't choke. Justin Lawrence grabbed the duck neck with both hands, took a deep breath, and the aroma was overwhelming. Girl, do you need anything else? The waiter asked with a smile. Nothing. Can you help me call the storyteller? Grace Flowers took out a piece of broken silver and handed it to the waiter, asking politely. All right, I'll call him right away. The waiter took the broken silver and happily walked towards the inner door of the tea house. No wonder his eyelids twitched so much today. It turned out that he was going to be rich again. After a while, the waiter in the tea house pulled the storyteller in this direction. Because he was pulled too fast, he occasionally heard the storyteller telling him to slow down. This brat, why are you walking so fast? You want to make my old bones fall. Slow down, slow down. The storyteller was pulled so hard that he staggered as he walked, his voice deep. Sir, that girl has something to do with you. Please go a little faster. The waiter slowed down a bit but continued to pull the storyteller along. Finally pulled to Jade Flowers' table, the storyteller stood firm, patted his chest to calm down, and after calming down, he patted the waiter's head and scolded, You can't do this with a girl looking for me. How much benefit did that girl give you to make you so proactive in risking your life? Oh, sir, what are you talking about? The old man needs to walk more to strengthen his physique. Look, I led you for a few steps, and my face is already flushed. It can be seen that your complexion has improved. The waiter touched his aching head and smiled with his mouth open. It's all nonsense. Go away, don't bother me. The storyteller glared at the waiter and waved his hand impatiently to dismiss him. Sir, this girl is looking for you. While you were chatting, the young man left first. The waiter said with a smile and turned to run away. The storyteller looked at Jade Flowers, glanced at her and recognized her, and said in surprise, Girl, why is it you? Please sit down, I'm troubling you again. Grace Flowers smiled and pointed to the opposite seat. Sitting down opposite Jade Flowers, the storyteller smiled and asked, "What news does the young lady want to ask me this time?" "Sir is indeed a smart person. This little girl came here and really wanted to inquire about some people in the country." Grace Flowers nodded, seeing that the storyteller was waiting for her to say something, and continued, "Do you know where I can find the most famous spy in the capital? I want to find a spy to help me investigate something. There are quite a few spies in our capital, but the areas these spies are familiar with and their distribution ranges are also different. I wonder if the girl can easily reveal whether she wants to find out about something, a person, a matter, an event, or an object." "Wait." The storyteller sighed and explained. "I want the spy to help me investigate an object. I want to know where the object is now." Grace Flowers then realized that ancient spies were divided into different fields. She used to think that ancient spies were omnipotent, and as long as you wanted the other party to inquire about something, you could find out. However, the division of labor could be more accurate and efficient. This way of dividing residential areas was worth advocating. This old man does know a spy. This spy is very secretive, and ordinary people have a hard time finding him. However, as long as he is found searching for something, 9 times out of 10 he will be discovered, so he is also a famous figure in the spy world. The storyteller thought about it and made a suggestion for a promising candidate. "Oh. Sir, please help me introduce this spy to the young lady." Grace Flowers hurriedly said, "With such a powerful spy, the chances of retrieving the Dragon Phoenix Cup would be much higher." Seemingly seeing a glimmer of hope, Grace Flowers looked at the storyteller expectantly. "This." The storyteller frowned in embarrassment. Jade Flowers, assuming it was a request for money, swiftly retrieved a few coins from her sleeve pocket and pushed them towards the storyteller. "Apologies for the trouble," she said sincerely. "I'll have difficulty contacting him." The storyteller, ignoring the money, looked at Grace Flowers and apologized. "Indeed, how then can we find him?" Jade Flowers frowned. Clearly, all capable experts enjoyed playing mysterious games to elevate their status. "I know a place this exceptional spy frequents. You could go there. If you're lucky, you might encounter him," the storyteller offered, admitting this was the only solution he could think of. "All right, sir, please tell me," Grace Flowers nodded, realizing she'd have to wait and see if she could meet this extraordinary spy. "However, there's one place unsuitable for a young lady like yourself." The storyteller hesitated, embarrassed, unsure whether to continue. "Sir, it's all right. I'll find a way," Grace Flowers smiled, unconcerned about any place being inconvenient. "It's Miles Tanner. He frequents the Fragrant Tower, always seeking the same woman, a certain Lou Grace. Though not a high-ranking courtesan, she's quite renowned there," the storyteller elaborated. "The Fragrant Tower you mention is surely the one under the Woods family, the one you spoke of earlier, correct?" Grace Flowers chuckled. "She'd dare infiltrate a dragon's lake or a tiger's cave, let alone a man's pleasure den. You have a remarkable memory, young lady. Indeed, it's the only love establishment called Winter Grace Building, owned by the Woods. Then there must be more than one Fragrant Tower in Kyoto. Which one does this gentleman visit?" It seemed men truly enjoyed such places, demand clearly outstripped supply. "You're right, there are indeed several. This particular spy frequents the one nearest, on Harmony Road," the storyteller explained, gesturing diagonally towards the left through the window. "That road is Harmony Road, and the Fragrant Tower is at its end." "Understood. Thank you for the advice," Grace Flowers nodded, glancing at Justin Lawrence, who was seated beside her, engrossed in his meal. It seemed she wouldn't be catching any adulterers this afternoon, nor enjoying any fragrant delights. She'd simply wait for the right opportunity to take little to such enticing places, though she wondered about the potential influence on the child. "If you have no further questions, young lady, I'll take my leave," the storyteller said, seeing Grace Flowers had no more inquiries. "None for now, thank you," she replied. Good luck, young lady. I hope you find the spy quickly. If I see him, I'll inform you, he said before withdrawing. By now, Justin Lawrence had finished a plate of duck necks, licking his lips with satisfaction. The spicy, savory flavor had truly pleased him. Grace Flowers wiped his greasy, messy hands, planning to scout the route. Even without entering the fragrant tower, she wanted to confirm its location. She could then proceed directly to Huang Long without further delay. Hashtag Chapter 43, A Serpent's Errand. Leaving the tea house, Grace Flowers, hand in hand with Jason Lawrence, strolled seemingly aimlessly, yet their path veered purposefully towards Harmony Road. After about a quarter of an hour, they reached a fork where a stone tablet marked the way, etched with the 3 characters for Harmony Road. Shops and stalls lined the road, much like any other bustling street. Continuing inwards for about half an hour, they reached the road's end. As expected, a grand, imposing building stood before them. The fragrant tower, strangely quiet, showed no sign of the courtesans who usually greeted guests, nor any men entering or exiting. It was likely still closed, as such establishments typically opened their doors to patrons only after nightfall. Grace Flowers, standing directly before the tower, looked up to see the 3 characters, Fragrant Tower, inscribed above the main gate. Her reconnaissance complete, Grace Flowers turned and returned to the manor, preparing to visit the Fragrant Tower the next day and seek out the courtesan Lou Grace, hoping to uncover some trace of Detective Milo. For now, this was the only way to discreetly inquire about the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. Money was no object. Justin Lawrence's allowance was ridiculously generous, and it was only fitting to contribute a little back to society. Returning to the prince's manor, she found the steward awaiting her. Your Highness, the steward greeted with a warm smile, the training room is prepared. Please inspect it and let me know if any adjustments are needed. I will modify it to your complete satisfaction. Rumors had painted the Flowers' eldest daughter as a martial arts cripple, utterly unskilled in combat. In the Great Jin dynasty, where even commoners possessed some martial knowledge, the steward had initially deemed her unworthy of their prince. However, upon meeting Grace Flowers, he realized the gossip was baseless. His practiced eye, honed from managing the Serenity Prince mansion, saw her potential. He believed that with dedicated training, her martial prowess could become formidable. Seeing her willingness to cultivate her skills, he was determined to prepare the training room to her exact specifications. Very well, let's have a look, Grace Flowers nodded. In this era, where martial arts held such high esteem, the saying, without martial skills, one can hardly travel, seemed to ring true. The steward led Grace Flowers to a room not far from the main building. Your Highness, this was previously an unused room. I thought with some renovations, it would make a suitable training room. Please, enter, the steward said, opening the door. The door swung open, revealing a spacious interior, brightly lit by the half-removed roof tiles. Only half the tiles were removed so that during rain or snow, training can continue uninterrupted, the steward explained, noticing Grace Flowers' inquisitive gaze towards the roof. Grace Flowers nodded, appreciating the thoughtful design. The steward's meticulous nature explained how he managed the Serenity Prince mansion so efficiently. Justin Lawrence clearly had a knack for choosing competent staff. A martial artist must meditate and cultivate their inner strength daily, rain or shine. And these weapons and hidden weapons, Your Highness, do any pique your interest? If you wish to learn, I can arrange for a skilled martial arts master to instruct you, the steward offered, gesturing towards a wall rack displaying an array of weaponry. Ah, these things are quite strange. Jason Lawrence clung to the weapon rack, his face alight with fascination as he examined the hidden weapons. The variety of hidden weapons, even more diverse than what she had seen at Exhibit House, dazzled Grace Flowers. Steward, have you gathered every hidden weapon ever seen in the Great Jin dynasty here? Grace Flowers exclaimed, marveling at the sight of weapons she'd only encountered in martial arts films, impressed by the steward's passion. This is but a small fraction, a culmination of my life's work, hoping it can assist your highness." The steward smiled, hoping the princess could master martial arts to aid the prince in his grand endeavors. Placing the hidden weapon in her hand down, Grace Flowers looked around the clean, bright room. "Excellent, I'm very satisfied. No changes needed." "Yes, your highness's satisfaction is all that matters." The steward nodded, relieved his efforts weren't in vain. "You may attend to your duties. Justin and I will examine these for a while." "Yes, I shall take my leave." The steward retreated to the door, closing it gently behind him. "Mother, I want to learn hidden weapons too." Jason Lawrence clutched several weapons, eager to try them out. "Mastering the secrets of hidden weapons is enough." Grace Flowers shook her head at the boy's eagerness to try everything. With sufficient internal energy, even a drop of water could become a deadly, invisible projectile. Besides, she wasn't particularly interested in hidden weapons. Her goal was to use anything as a weapon, without carrying cumbersome gear. "Yes, after I master the sword technique, I'll start learning about weapons." Jason Lawrence nodded obediently. He was currently practicing his swordsmanship and had only memorized the weapon manual, not yet practiced it. "Good boy, Justin." Grace Flowers smiled, stroking Jason Lawrence's head, her thoughts shifting from weapons to how to persuade Lou Grace at the Fragrant Pavilion to help. Bribery would be ideal, but she wondered if Lou Grace could be swayed by money. Further contemplation was pointless. She would meet Lou Grace tomorrow and improvise. Dismissing the thought, Grace Flowers joined Jason Lawrence in examining the weapons. The following day, the previously clear sky turned gloomy. Standing in the courtyard, Grace Flowers looked up at the swirling dark clouds, sensing imminent rain. Despite her dislike for venturing out in the rain, she wouldn't delay her visit to Lou Grace, resolving to brave the downpour to reach the Fragrant Pavilion. Standing beside Grace Flowers, Jason Lawrence mimicked her gaze towards the sky, frowning. He, too, detested rain. The two, one adult and one child, with their similar faces, both frowned and sighed at the sky. Passing servants couldn't help but smile at the scene. Although the young master was adopted, he resembled a perfect blend of the prince and princess, sharing many of their habits. His handsome features, sweet words, and obedience endeared him to the servants, making them feel as if he were their master's trueborn son. "Justin, mother has to go out for a bit today. It's about to rain, so stay inside the manor, all right?" Grace Flowers, her gaze drifting from the sky, looked down at Jason Lawrence sighing beside her. "Mother, it's going to rain, and you still have to go out." Jason Lawrence pouted. With his mother gone, he'd be all alone at home, bored stiff. "Yes, I have some business to attend to. Be a good boy and stay in the manor. When you have free time, go to the training grounds and practice your martial arts." Grace Flowers smiled. It was indeed quite dull for this little tyke with no friends his own age to play with. "All right then, mother, come back early." Jason Lawrence nodded, then suddenly remembered something and quickly added, "Mother, the world outside is dangerous. Be careful not to be harmed." "Oh, right, take little spirit with you. Let him protect you in my stead." As he spoke, Jason Lawrence pulled the small spirit snake, his constant companion, from his pocket, his small face etched with worry. "This little rascal, if real danger comes, who's protecting whom, you protecting mother or mother protecting you?" Grace Flowers chuckled, crouching down and pinching Jason Lawrence's small face. Looking at this little man, she felt his concern, and though amused, she was also warmed. Of course, Justin protects mother. That's why Justin must diligently practice martial arts, so he can protect mother well. Jason Lawrence spoke seriously, not at all aware of how endearing his words were coming from such a small child. "Good son, I knew raising you wouldn't be in vain." Grace Flowers planted a kiss on Jason Lawrence's small face, suddenly feeling as if she had carried this child in her womb for 10 months. Looking at this understanding child, her heart swelled with pride. Her son was so sensible and thoughtful. Then mother, go and do your work. Jason Lawrence waved his hand. Don't lose little spirit. Jason Lawrence placed the spirit snake, curled into a ball, into Grace Flowers' hand. After spending some time with the spirit snake, Grace Flowers no longer found the little snake frightening. She looked amusedly at little spirit poking its head out and blinking at her, shaking her head and laughing. How could this little snake protect her? It would be lucky not to get squashed, let alone protect her. Little spirit, you must protect mother well. This great responsibility is entrusted to you. This is the first time I've given you a mission, so you must be serious. Jason Lawrence instructed little spirit. All right, this spirit snake will protect master with its life. Little spirit, the spirit snake, nodded at Jason Lawrence, its face unable to conceal its excitement. Finally, it could be of use, finally, it could protect its master. Thinking of this, it couldn't help but tear up. All right, let's go. Grace Flowers' dress had no pockets, only her sleeves had them. She tugged at her sleeve pocket, wondering if she should put the little snake inside when little spirit, seemingly reading her mind, shook its head vigorously. Mother, little spirit says if you put him in your sleeve, he won't be able to see danger coming and won't be able to protect you. Jason Lawrence quickly translated. Grace Flowers looked at the child and the little snake staring intently at her, both so serious as if the little snake could truly protect her. She wanted to say she wasn't relying on little spirit for protection, but seeing the two pairs of large eyes before her, she relented. Oh well, the child and the little snake were both so fragile. Best not to say anything that might hurt their feelings. Little spirit hissed, its eyes fixed on Grace Flowers' hair. Jason Lawrence listened intently to little spirit, nodding repeatedly after it finished speaking. He took little spirit from Grace Flowers' hand and placed it on top of her head. Little spirit automatically coiled itself around her bun. If one didn't look closely, it appeared as though a green string was tied around a circular bun, adding a touch of lively beauty to Grace Flowers' appearance. Truly beautiful, let's keep it this way. Jason Lawrence looked closely, nodding in satisfaction. He said to Grace Flowers, Mother, little spirit is on your hair. It said that from there, it can see further and help you avoid danger. Grace Flowers took out a small mirror and looked at herself. The base of her hair bun was wrapped once by little spirit, looking as if it were tied with a string. She didn't usually wear any hair ornaments, and now having little spirit as one added a special touch. All right, let's leave it like this. Putting away the mirror, Grace Flowers stood up, waved to Jason Lawrence, and said with a smile, Mother is leaving now. Be good at home. Jason Lawrence nodded, waving goodbye to Grace Flowers. Hashtag Chapter 44, Are women not allowed to seek out young maidens? At noon, the sun blazed, the streets bustled. Fragrant Pavilion, though open, was strangely quiet, the courtesans likely still at their midday rest. Only a few guards dozed. Grace Flowers entered, unnoticed by the guard slumped asleep on a table, lost in a deep slumber. Observing Fragrant Pavilion, the first floor was a grand hall, 2 staircases at the far end leading to the second floor. The pungent scent of cosmetics hung heavy in the air. Grace Flowers frowned. This fragrant pavilion was no different from the brothels in old television dramas, only lacking the flirtatious laughter of the courtesans and the playful banter of patrons, giving it a desolate feel. Knock, knock, knock. After waiting for a considerable time with no sign of the guard waking, Grace Flowers rapped on the table. The sleeping guard jolted awake, startled, thinking something was amiss, but seeing only a strange young woman standing by the table in the otherwise empty hall, he relaxed. Miss, what brings you here? This is a place where men seek pleasure, it's not suitable for a young lady. A middle-aged guard looked at Grace Flowers, frowning. Big brother, maybe she wants to become a courtesan here. Look at her fresh appearance, she's even prettier than the girls here. A younger guard rubbed his eyes, his gaze clearing, and stared at Grace Flowers, dumbfounded. Nonsense. Go on. Go on, don't talk rubbish. The middle-aged guard glared at the younger one, then turned to Grace Flowers. Miss, you should leave quickly. We're about to open for business. If customers see you, I'm afraid you'll run into trouble. Thank you for the warning, big brother. I'm here to see Miss Lou Grace. Please inform her. Grace Flowers found this middle-aged guard to be upright, unlike the lecherous guards in those old dramas, and her impression of Fragrant Pavilion shifted. A national chain was indeed a national chain brothel was of higher quality, even the guards they hired were decent. Lou Grace. Do you have business with Miss Lou Grace? The guard asked suspiciously. Miss Lou Grace had grown up in Fragrant Pavilion, he'd never heard of her having any close friends outside. Miss Lou Grace and I have never met. I have something to discuss with her. I hope you can help. Grace Flowers took a silver ingot from her sleeve and discreetly slipped it into the middle-aged guard's hand. Miss, you don't understand. Our Fragrant Pavilion has a rule, no one can meet privately with the courtesans unless it's during business hours and they're personally summoned. The guard returned the silver to Grace Flowers, shaking his head helplessly. Grace Flowers was taken aback. What strange rule was this, not allowing private meetings with the courtesans? Wasn't this a business? How could they refuse customers like this? Big brother, I really have urgent business with Miss Lou Grace. Consider that I'm a girl, seeking Miss Lou Grace during your business hours would be very inconvenient. Please help me, think of a way for me to meet her. Grace Flowers took out another silver ingot and, along with the returned one, pressed them into the guard's hand, her expression earnest and anxious. This. The guard held the heavy silver, looking at Grace Flowers' worried face, but remained hesitant. If he broke Fragrant Pavilion's rules, he would lose this good job. How about this, so you won't be in a difficult position, big brother, could you take me to the madam? I'll speak with her. That way, it won't be difficult for you. Grace Flowers saw that this upright guard was genuinely conflicted, not just trying to extort more silver from her, so she devised this plan. Fragrant Pavilion, a national chain, likely had internal rules a guard couldn't simply break. To avoid putting this big brother in a difficult position and causing him to lose his job, it would be better to seek out the madam directly. Can I meet with the madam privately? You can meet the madam. Wait a moment, I'll ask her if she's available. The guard considered this, finding it safer than risking a meeting between Grace Flowers and Lou Grace, and nodded in agreement. All right, thank you, big brother. Grace Flowers breathed a sigh of relief, quickly expressing her gratitude. The middle-aged guard nodded impassively at Grace Flowers, then turned to the younger guards who were staring at her, warning them, behave yourselves with this young lady. Mind your own business and don't bother her. Big brother, with a beauty like this, how could we bear to bother her? Don't worry, don't worry. A seemingly jovial guard chuckled. That's right, big brother, go quickly, don't keep the young lady waiting. Another young guard also chuckled. Seeing his subordinates teasing, the middle-aged guard felt reassured. He knew they had their limits, so he nodded to Grace Flowers and walked towards the stairs at the end of the hall. Miss, please have a seat, don't stand, you'll get tired. The jovial guard said to Grace Flowers with a smile. Thank you, brother. Grace Flowers nodded, smiling back at the guard. The young guards, seeing Grace Flowers smile, stared again. This young lady became more beautiful the more they looked at her. Her refined air was something the courtesans in the pavilion lacked. The strength of character between her brows gave her a heroic air, captivating the guards who were used to seeing fragile or coquettish women. Seeing Grace Flowers sit down, the guards didn't disturb her further, just sat at a nearby table, occasionally glancing at her. After a while, footsteps sounded. The burly figure of the middle-aged guard appeared at the top of the stairs. He quickly descended, approaching Grace Flowers. Miss, the madam has agreed to see you. Please follow me. Alright, thank you so much for your help, big brother. Grace Flowers stood up and followed the guard up the stairs. The second floor was elegantly structured, feeling like a unique inn. Following the guard down a long corridor, they reached a drawbridge at the end, connecting to a pavilion opposite, currently raised. Seeing this secluded, picturesque corner, Grace Flowers was astonished. The design was ingenious. At first glance, the opposite pavilion seemed unrelated, but lowering the drawbridge connected the two. The guard lowered the drawbridge. Miss, please cross this bridge. The madam's quarters are over there. A maid will escort you to her. I won't see you further. Thank you. Grace Flowers nodded to the guard, but remembering her fear of heights, she looked at the drawbridge, at least 7 or 8 meters above the ground, and broke out in a cold sweat. Taking a deep breath, suppressing her pounding heart, shrinking back, Grace Flowers stared straight ahead, not daring to look down. Stepping onto the swaying bridge, her legs immediately felt weak. She wanted to crawl across, regardless of appearances, rather than walk. Holding her breath, gritting her teeth, Grace Flowers lifted her foot, trembling as she inched forward. It felt like an eternity before she finally reached the other side. Setting foot on the pavilion floor, she sighed in relief, turning to wave at the middle-aged guard who had patiently waited for her to cross the bridge at a snail's pace. The guard nodded and raised the drawbridge. Wiping the sweat from her brow, Grace Flowers cursed inwardly. Damn it, she'd been an idiot to think the drawbridge design was ingenious. This thing was clearly a test of courage for those with a fear of heights like her. Miss, please follow me. The madam is inside. A gentle female voice suddenly spoke from behind. Grace Flowers turned to see a delicate young woman of 16 or 17 looking at her, a bright smile on her face. Alright, thank you, Mississippi. Grace Flowers nodded, looking at the smiling young woman. The tension she'd felt moments before seemed to melt away, and she unconsciously returned the smile. Please, call me Lily Pearl. I'm Madam's personal maid. Lily Pearl's smile was warm and approachable. Lily Pearl, do you happen to know Miss Lou Grace? Grace Flowers wasn't about to let this opportunity slip. Meeting someone so affable, it would be a waste not to inquire. She lived by the principle of never letting a chance for advancement pass her by. Miss Lou Grace. Are you here to see her? Lily Pearl looked at Grace Flowers, inquiringly. Yes, I am. Do you know what Miss Lou Grace likes? Grace Flowers nodded. Since Lily Pearl was Madam's personal maid, she would have naturally overheard the guards informing Madam of her arrival and her request to see Lou Grace. Are you and Miss Lou Grace acquainted? No one has ever come looking for her before. Lily Pearl didn't answer directly, instead responding with a curious question. Miss Lou Grace and I aren't acquainted. I simply have some business with her. Grace Flowers chuckled softly. Though Lily Pearl seemed amiable, she was clearly tight-lipped. It seemed even Madam's personal maid wasn't easily swayed. She decided to abandon her attempts to glean information from Lily Pearl. After a short walk, they arrived at a room. Lily Pearl knocked softly, and a seductive voice called out from within, "Enter." Pushing the door open, Lily Pearl stepped aside and murmured to Grace Flowers, "Please, come in, Mississippi." Grace Flowers crossed the threshold. The first thing she saw was a beautiful young woman reclining on a plush bed by the window. She held a delicate hand mirror, gazing at her reflection and smoothing her neatly arranged hair. "Madam, your guest has arrived." Lily Pearl approached the alluring woman, spoke, and then retreated to stand silently at the side. "This young lady wishes to see Lou Grace." The alluring woman set down her mirror. She wore a vibrant red robe with a low neckline, and her eyes, as she looked at Grace Flowers, were languid and seductive, a gaze few men could withstand. "Yes, I wonder if you could assist me in meeting Miss Lou Grace." Grace Flowers suppressed her surprise. She had assumed the madam of any brothel would be a middle-aged woman. She hadn't expected the madam of the fragrant pavilion to be so young, perhaps in her early 20s at most. She found it difficult to utter the word madam. "Oh, just call me madam. All the girls and staff here call me that. I'm used to it, hee." The alluring woman covered her mouth with her hand as she giggled coquettishly. The sound was truly captivating. Grace Flowers couldn't help but wonder, if the madam possessed such beauty, how stunning must the fragrant pavilion's top courtesan be. Chapter 45, A Flamboyant Demon. "Miss, please sit." The madam rose from the chaise lounge, gesturing towards a stool beside the table, addressing Grace Flowers in a gentle tone. Grace Flowers nodded, taking a seat as instructed. "Our girls aren't readily available for private meetings. May I inquire about the nature of your request to see Lou Grace privately?" The madam lifted a teacup from the nearby table, taking a small sip. Well, Grace Flowers paused, considering her reason for seeking Lou Grace. She intended to ask her to relay a message to Detective Milo, a request that wasn't inherently shady. "If you don't clarify your purpose, I must consider whether to summon Lou Grace. Protecting the girls in this establishment is my responsibility. Knowing nothing about you, I can't risk allowing you to meet her." The madam chuckled softly, placing the teacup back on the table, then reclining on the chaise lounge in a graceful pose. "I've heard that a detective named Detective Milo occasionally visits Miss Lou Grace. I wish to request that she relay a message to him on my behalf. I require his assistance." Grace Flowers replied. Why not approach Detective Milo directly instead of relying on Lou Grace? A slender, crimson-painted finger traced the madam's red lips, a suggestive gesture. Detective Milo is elusive, his movements unpredictable. If I could locate him easily, I wouldn't need to trouble Miss Lou Grace. I've heard he's a regular guest here, and a friend suggested I seek her help. Perhaps she can connect me with him. Grace Flowers offered a wry smile. This clandestine operation, shrouded in mystery, made her question whether Detective Milo's reputation was based on genuine skill or mere rumors within the martial arts world. I can facilitate this, but not without compensation. The madam subtly gestured towards Lily Pearl, who was standing nearby. Understanding the cue, Lily Pearl approached the table, poured Grace Flowers a cup of tea, and then retreated to her previous position, standing silently. I understand. Please state your price, madam. I'll make the necessary arrangements. Grace Flowers nodded knowingly, prepared to resolve the matter financially. Silver, we have plenty of at Fragrant Pavilion. The madam smiled. As you know, Fragrant Pavilion is a family enterprise. Our daily profits are substantial. We're not short of silver. Then, what are your terms, madam? Grace Flowers' lips curved slightly as she calmly inquired, picking up the teacup Lily Pearl had poured, examining it briefly before setting it down. Rest assured, miss, we at Fragrant Pavilion don't force virtuous women into prostitution. What we desire isn't for you to become one of our courtesans. The madam observed Grace Flowers' composure, a flicker of admiration in her eyes. This young woman, daring to approach Fragrant Pavilion alone, was clearly no ordinary person. Madam, you flatter me. I know a renowned establishment like Fragrant Pavilion can have any girl it desires. Grace Flowers smiled, meeting the madam's gaze directly. Let's be straightforward. I have a request, and I understand there's a price. Please state your terms. If it's within my power, I'll comply. If not, I'll withdraw my request for Lou Grace's assistance. Her words were direct and decisive. While seeking assistance, she wouldn't grovel. If she couldn't find Detective Milo through this avenue, she could find another detective. There were countless investigators in the world, she needn't limit herself to this one option. You're refreshingly candid. Very well, I'll be blunt. The madam's gaze shifted towards the inner chambers, where a figure reclined leisurely on the chaise lounge. Grace Flowers, attentive to the madam's every nuance, followed her gaze and abruptly stood, her composure replaced by an ardent expression, her eyes gleaming. Fixated on something within the inner chambers, she moved unconsciously towards them. Startled by Grace Flowers' sudden action, both the madam and Lily Pearl reacted. Following a signal from the madam, Lily Pearl quickly stepped forward, intercepting Grace Flowers. "Miss, the inner chambers are the madam's private quarters. Please refrain from entering." Lily Pearl, usually cheerful, now appeared slightly panicked. This young woman mustn't provoke the master, otherwise, no one could save her. Grace Flowers, captivated by the object of her fascination, disregarded whose private quarters they were. She yearned to touch it. With a slight flick of her wrist, she pushed the unsuspecting Lily Pearl aside and continued forward. Entering the inner chambers, she walked directly towards the chaise lounge. A figure clad in red lay reclined, their back turned towards her. The garment's loose fit, combined with their position, made it difficult to discern their gender, despite their long, cascading black hair. A look of panic, similar to Lily Pearl's, crossed the madam's elegant face. However, her fear wasn't for Grace Flowers' life but for provoking the master on the chaise lounge. "Miss, stop. Our master is not someone you can approach," the madam shouted, reaching out to restrain Grace Flowers. Grace Flowers abruptly sidestepped, evading the madam's grasp. "Heavens! I've finally found a Ming Dynasty Rui hairpin." Grace Flowers moved past the reclining figure, reaching for the hairpin placed in a pen holder on the wall cabinet, carefully examining it with an awestruck expression. Holding the Rui hairpin, Grace Flowers finally acknowledged the madam, recalling that the inner chambers were private and off-limits. "My apologies, I entered your private quarters without permission. I'll leave immediately." With that, her gaze returned to the hairpin in her hand, and she drifted back towards the outer room. The madam and Lily Pearl stared, dumbfounded, at Grace Flowers' retreating figure. Had she not even glanced at the person on the chaise lounge? The master, who captivated both men and women alike, had been completely ignored. Ah, what a pity. It's a fake. I thought it was genuine. Are authentic ones truly so elusive? Grace Flowers' disappointed sigh reached them. The madam's astonishment deepened. The Rui hairpin was a 99% accurate replica, indistinguishable even to experienced antique appraisers. How had this young woman identified it as a fake so quickly? Perhaps prompted by Grace Flowers' surprising observation, the motionless figure on the chaise lounge finally stirred. A slender, pale hand resting on their knee beckoned the madam. Understanding the gesture, the madam softly replied, "Yes, master." Then, she winked at Lily Pearl. Lily Pearl nodded and went out to Grace Flowers, who was still scrutinizing the hairpin. "Miss, our master wishes to see you." "Your master? Who? Where?" Grace Flowers looked up from the hairpin, questioning Lily Pearl without hesitation, then added curiously, "Isn't the madam your master?" "Our master is in the inner chambers. The master I speak of is not the madam." Lily Pearl, unfazed by the barrage of questions, answered each one succinctly. "Inner chambers? Was there someone else inside?" Grace Flowers inquired strangely, then muttered, tapping her head, "Why didn't I notice anyone else in the inner chambers just now?" Hearing Grace Flowers muttering, both the madam and Lily Pearl paled. Was this young lady truly oblivious or just pretending? Their master, so large, lay on the daybed, and she had even stepped over him to retrieve the Rui jade hairpin. Although she hadn't touched him, she had been in close proximity. "Miss, please follow me," Lily Pearl, regaining her composure, said to Grace Flowers. Grace Flowers stood up, still holding the Rui jade hairpin, and followed Lily Pearl into the inner chambers. Upon entering and seeing the figure reclining on the daybed, a cold sweat broke out. She hadn't even noticed him. Her attention had been completely fixated on the Rui jade hairpin, leaving no room for anything else. "Master, the young lady has entered," the madam respectfully addressed the figure on the daybed, her charming face now serious, devoid of its usual coquettishness. "This young master seems to have no presence at all," allowing the young lady to approach without even noticing my existence, the figure, whose back was turned to them, spoke in an indescribably alluring voice. "Oh, sorry," Grace Flowers shrugged. Whenever she encountered antiques that captivated her, she could completely ignore any person or object around her. This bad habit had been with her since childhood, and she had been reproached by her friends for it countless times. The figure on the daybed slowly turned around. A devastatingly handsome male face appeared before everyone. This face, no matter where it went, would be the center of attention. Moreover, his attire was flamboyant and gaudy. Grace Flowers could only describe it as such. In her eyes, this man was a flamboyant demon. This flamboyant demon must make women scream wherever he goes, so when Grace Flowers looked at this beautiful man with the same casual glance she would give a cabbage, then back at the ruby jade hairpin in her hand, not only Lily Pearl and the madam felt that Grace Flowers was unusual, but even the beautiful man on the daybed seemed to feel completely ignored. Yet, a faint smile appeared on his face, and he flicked his wrist. Suddenly, a red silk ribbon, as if alive, flew straight towards Grace Flowers, wrapping around the ruby jade hairpin in her hand. Grace Flowers only saw a flash of red before her eyes, and the ruby jade hairpin in her hand was yanked away by a strong force. By the time she reacted, the slender fingers of the demon on the bed were already holding the ruby jade hairpin he had just snatched from her. "Young lady, you should know that when talking to someone, you should focus on them. Otherwise, it's very impolite," the demon said, toying with the ruby jade hairpin in his hand, his gaze fixed on Grace Flowers' beautiful face. There's no other way. Your charm is no match for the ruby jade hairpin, so," Grace Flowers chuckled. This demon was probably used to everyone's attention, and now her lack of it made him feel uneasy. "How do you know this ruby jade hairpin is a fake?" Seeing Grace Flowers staring at the ruby jade hairpin in his hand, his enchanting, soul-snatching eyes flashed. With a flick of his wrist, he threw the ruby jade hairpin out the window. "Ah, the ruby hairpin," Grace Flowers cried out, rushing to the window. She saw the ruby jade hairpin shatter into pieces under the sunlight, the fragments sparkling. "Are you crazy? Throwing the ruby jade hairpin out the window?" Grace Flowers' scolding made both Lily Pearl and the madam tremble. They looked at the man on the daybed with horrified expressions. Their master was not a benevolent person. Once, a woman, out of love and hate for not being able to have him, had merely uttered a harsh word and had her hand tendons severed on his orders. Now, this young lady dared to call their master crazy. This matter, the outcome would likely be disastrous. Hashtag Chapter 46, Transaction. The bewitching pretty man's smile deepened, devoid of any anger. Excellent, discarding the jade hairpin was indeed the right move. The young lady has finally decided to put her mind to conversing properly with this young master. The enchanting man glanced at the mama, uttering two words, "Provide a seat." Grace Flowers took a deep breath. This kind of arrogant and eccentric person truly defied common sense. He'd smashed a jade hairpin, a fake, but still priceless, just to attract her attention. This person was truly unreasonable, and Grace Flowers felt like 1,000 camels were stampeding in her heart. Lily Pearl immediately brought a chair to Grace Flowers' side, saying, "Young lady, please sit." "No, words that don't agree are superfluous. You and I have nothing to discuss. Farewell." Grace Flowers spoke coldly. Anyone who disregarded antiques and casually destroyed them was considered an enemy in her eyes. She had absolutely no intention of sitting down and talking with an enemy. "Young lady, wait a moment." The mama hastily blocked Grace Flowers, seeing that her master was very interested in this young lady and absolutely wouldn't let her leave just like that. "Move aside." Grace Flowers' eyes flashed with a cold light, her whole body radiating a compelling aura. The icy breath emanating from her made the mama stunned, rooted in place, unsure what to do. She had mingled in the world of pleasure and had seen all kinds of people, but she had never encountered a young lady with such an aura. Do you think Fragrant Pavilion is a place you can come and go as you please? Seeing Grace Flowers change, the bewitching pretty man wasn't afraid. On the contrary, a strong trace of interest arose in his charming eyes. This young lady had indeed brought him a small surprise. Do you think you can stop me? Grace Flowers sneered. This was a good opportunity to test how much her martial arts had progressed. As long as this young master doesn't permit it, you won't be able to leave. So, want to try? The bewitching pretty man reached out and stroked a strand of hair hanging down his cheek, a captivating smile plastered on his face. Grace Flowers didn't want to waste words. She turned, slipped past the mama, and walked towards the door. Behind her, the sound of clapping hands rang out. Before the clapping ceased, more than a dozen people dressed in gray rushed out from all directions, instantly surrounding Grace Flowers, staring fixedly at her. Feeling something stirring in her hair bun, Grace Flowers remembered the little spirit snake that was always coiled there. It must have sensed danger and was preparing to protect her. She reached up and stroked her hair bun, soothing little snake's warm body, whispering, "Don't worry, stay put. I can handle these people." Although these people seemed to have decent martial arts skills, she was confident she could deal with them. "Young lady, these are all first-rate experts. I advise you not to struggle needlessly and return to speak properly with our master," the mama advised. These men were difficult even for highly skilled martial artists to contend with, let alone an unarmed young lady. "Is that so?" Grace Flowers didn't turn around, only calmly asking in return, her eyes searching for an opening in the encirclement. The burly men only surrounded Grace Flowers, not attacking. It seemed they didn't intend to strike, only to prevent her from leaving. Seeing this, Grace Flowers' eyes flashed. The position she was standing in happened to be next to a table, her hand reaching for the teacup placed on it. The bewitching pretty man had risen from the long couch, watching with amusement as Grace Flowers remained calm in the face of danger. He ran a slender index finger along his chin seductively. This little woman looked petite, but her courage was not small. The mama and Lily Pearl both wore expressions of certainty that this young lady couldn't escape. But right after Grace Flowers made her move, their expressions shifted from certainty to disbelief. Clang! Grace Flowers slammed the cup in her hand down on the table. The porcelain cup instantly shattered into countless fragments. Immediately after, she waved her hand towards the pile of fragments, sending forth a powerful gust of palm force that swept up the fragments on the table, sending them flying quickly towards the front left. The fragments, carrying sharp palm force, attacked the burly man standing at the front left position with lightning speed. By the time they reacted, they felt their whole bodies go numb, their strength seemingly drained in an instant, and they collapsed to the ground. In a blink of an eye, Grace Flowers had taken down 6 or 7 experts, easily creating a gap in the encirclement. Next, before the other burly men could react and attack, she swept up the teapot and cups on the table, turning with perfect grace. The small cup in her hand flew towards the remaining men. These men, caught off guard, fell to the ground. Looking at the groaning men lying on the ground, Grace Flowers smiled with satisfaction. Under Justin Lawrence's guidance, her martial arts had progressed rapidly, increasing another level in just a few days. Heavens, Master, this young lady's martial arts seemed to have reached the 7th level. The mama recovered from her astonishment, muttering in disbelief. The bewitching pretty man concealed the surprise in his eyes. Such a powerful martial artist, why hadn't she appeared at the Grand Martial Arts Gathering? Who was this young lady? She looked only 16 or 17 years old, yet possessed such formidable martial arts skills. Farewell. Grace Flowers looked through the curtain, waving goodbye to the 3 people in the room in a carefree manner, turning to leave. The real jade hairpin, just as she reached the door, the bewitching pretty man's voice, neither loud nor soft, rang out behind her, but it clearly reached Grace Flower's ears. Upon hearing the words, "real jade hairpin," Grace Flowers immediately turned back, looking at the pretty man on the long couch in the room. "Do you have it? As long as the young lady is willing to make a deal with this young master can let you admire the real jade hairpin." The bewitching pretty man had risen from the long couch and slowly walked out from behind the screen, approaching Grace Flowers. He lowered his head, looking at Grace Flowers, who only reached his chest, and gave a charming, seductive smile. Only when this enchanting man stood up did Grace Flowers realize that he was actually as tall as Justin Lawrence. Humph, why be so tall? It made her feel instantly shorter standing before him. The burly men who had been sprawled on the ground had quickly left the room after the bewitching pretty man waved his hand. The fragments Grace Flowers had created were also cleaned up by Lily Pearl. This room seemed as if it had never experienced the short but explosive confrontation. Grace Flowers turned and went to sit by the table, no longer wanting to compare height with this enchanting man. She stared at him and asked directly, "What deal? Speak. Come to my place and be this young master's antique appraisal tutor." Someone who could recognize a fake at a glance must be very knowledgeable about antiques. "I don't even know who you are." Grace Flowers snorted coldly. If this person was a bandit who stole antiques and then asked her to appraise them, wouldn't she be considered an accomplice? Remembering the 3 stolen secret manuals from the Imperial Palace, getting involved with these imperial treasures wasn't worth 10 heads. She valued her life very much. "Young lady, our master is the young master of the woods, Martin Woods." The mama was slightly surprised. This young lady didn't even know who her master was. Huh. The young master of the woods, one of the 3 great noble families of the Jianghu. Grace Flowers was stunned. She hadn't expected to meet the young master of the woods, one of the 3 great noble families of the Jianghu. Indeed. Mama nodded, the surprise in this young lady's eyes didn't seem feigned. In this world, there was actually a young lady who didn't know young Master Woods, truly surprising. It was said that his portrait had been circulated among the noble ladies, so a young lady who hadn't seen his portrait was truly unbelievable. "Oh, all right, then with your status, you surely wouldn't steal. If so, the antiques you asked me to appraise must have been obtained through legitimate means. So tell me, how should I act as your antique appraiser?" Grace Flowers asked. "Follow me, I can provide you with food and lodging, and when I need antiques appraised, I'll ask you to do it." Martin Woods, hearing Grace Flowers' worries, couldn't help but scowl. This little lass really knew how to overthink. Did he look like someone who would steal? No. Grace Flowers shook her head, flatly refusing. "If you have antiques that need appraising, you can send someone to inform me, but I won't come to live where you provide. I have my own place." Hearing Grace Flowers' refusal, Mama and Lily Pearl were nearly dumbfounded with astonishment. So many young ladies wanted to be by the young master's side, a good fortune they prayed for, yet this young lady directly refused. The jade hairpin. Martin Woods, the first time he invited a young lady to follow him, was actually rejected so decisively. He couldn't help but wonder if his masculine charm had diminished. So, he took out the jade hairpin. That this young lady was infatuated with to tempt her, but who knew? Using the jade hairpin to tempt me is useless. This young lady said no means no. Since we can't come to an agreement, then farewell. Grace Flowers, although infatuated with antiques, almost forgetting everything upon seeing them, still had her own principles. How could she be led by the nose by this enchanting man with a jade hairpin? All right, don't. Chapter 47, Truly the Fate of a Servant. Martin Woods, slightly dubious, looked at the small hand before him, raising an eyebrow. "Take what?" he asked, as if he owed this young woman nothing. "A genuine jade wish hairpin, right? The deal is done, so shouldn't I be allowed to examine the jade wish hairpin?" Grace Flowers looked directly at Martin Woods. Forgetful at such a young age, not good. The Jade Wish hairpin is at home. Next time you come to see the antiques, I'll bring it for you to see. Martin Woods smiled, he'd wondered what it was all about. Very well. Grace Flowers nodded, believing Martin Woods to be a man of his word. How should I address you, and how can I contact you? This lass hadn't introduced herself since entering. If he let her leave like this, finding her again would be difficult. My name is Susie Green, a maid at Serenity Prince Mansion. If you wish to contact me, send a letter to the guards at the Serenity Prince Mansion gate and tell them to pass it on to me. Grace Flowers spoke. She naturally couldn't reveal her identity as the princess. Borrowing Susie Green's name was the safest option. Fortunately, she had sent Susie Green to the Serenity Prince Mansion, otherwise, borrowing her name would have been difficult. Now, it was perfect. After all, there really was someone named Susie Green at Serenity Prince Mansion. Even if Martin Woods investigated, he wouldn't find anything. Preferring to be a maid at Serenity Prince Mansion rather than enjoying a life of luxury with this young master, truly the fate of a servant. Martin Woods had assumed this girl was a young lady from some noble family. After all, the noble and elegant aura emanating from her wasn't something a lowly maid could possess. But it seemed this girl wouldn't use her maid status at Serenity Prince Mansion as a cover. Hearing her claim to be a maid and refuse his generous offer made him feel quite displeased. I must serve the young miss at the prince's mansion, naturally, I cannot leave. Grace Flowers stated. Your young miss? Is there a young miss at Serenity Prince Mansion? Martin Woods pondered. He didn't seem to recall the third prince of Serenity Prince Mansion having any concubines. The only female in the mansion was the recently married Lady the Flowers. My young miss is the princess of Serenity Prince Mansion. I've been her personal maid since childhood. Grace Flowers explained. She guessed this charming rogue would definitely investigate Serenity Prince Mansion. Since she wanted to fabricate this half-truth identity, she had to try and stick to the facts. No wonder Miss Susie Green possesses such formidable martial arts skills. It turns out she's one of the Flowers people. A sudden realization dawned. It was said that the Flowers was a place where dragons and tigers lay hidden, full of top-tier experts. Now, seeing that even a lowly maid possessed such high-level martial arts, it seemed the rumors held some truth. With such formidable martial arts, why not participate in the martial arts tournament? Martin Woods finally believed Grace Flowers. After all, with the Flowers as her backing, such martial arts skills, though rare in the Jianghu, might be more common within the Flowers than outsiders imagined. What's so interesting about that tournament? What happens after competing? Can it be eaten or worn? A complete waste of time. Grace Flowers raised an eyebrow, speaking with disdain and arrogance. I'm confident that even without participating in the martial arts tournament, with my skills, I doubt most people are my match. So, there's no need to compete. Huh, Miss Susie Green, you're quite audacious. I admire that. Martin Woods threw back his head and laughed heartily, his captivating eyes filled with appreciation. This girl truly had her own unique perspective. One more thing, if you happen to encounter Detective Milo, please inform Serenity Prince Mansion. Grace Flowers instructed. As you are now family, if there's anything you wish to inquire about, I will have my detectives investigate. Martin Woods said with a smile, Detective Milo is said to be elusive, like a dragon rarely seen. It's uncertain when he'll arrive at Fragrant Pavilion. For Miss Susie Green to come to Fragrant Pavilion alone to seek Lou Grace, the matter must be of great importance. Our Fragrant Pavilion spans the entire Great Gene dynasty, possessing the most extensive and comprehensive intelligence network. We can assist you in searching for anything. That would be wonderful. I'm searching for the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. Do you have paper and brush? I'll draw it for you. Grace Flowers rejoiced. In the presence of a handsome man, her guard often lowered. A few cups of wine, and everything she should and shouldn't say came tumbling out. Indeed, beauty and wine could be a downfall. Perhaps the Woods outwardly ran fragrant pavilion, but covertly, their intelligence network likely covered the entire Great Gene dynasty. Martin Wood signaled to Lily Pearl, who promptly exited and returned shortly with a tray bearing paper, brush, and ink. Lily Pearl placed the tray on the table, spread a sheet of schwanching paper before Grace Flowers, and offered her the ink-dipped brush. Grace Flowers accepted the brush and sketched the form of the Phoenix Dragon Goblet onto the schwanching paper. "This is the Phoenix Dragon Goblet." Grace Flowers gently blew on the drawing, waited for the ink to dry slightly, and then pushed it towards Martin Woods. "I've never heard of the Phoenix Dragon Goblet. Is it an antique?" Martin Woods examined the drawing in his hand, studying it for a moment before asking. "Not exactly an antique. It probably only has a few decades of history." Grace Flowers shook her head. According to historical records, the Phoenix Dragon Goblet appeared towards the end of the Great Gene dynasty. It wasn't referred to as an antique, just an ordinary object. However, it seemed the Phoenix Dragon Goblet held some significant purpose to be recorded in history. "Miss Susie Green, what is your purpose in seeking it?" Martin Woods looked at Grace Flowers. "Or, in other words, what special significance does it hold for you?" "It does hold special significance for me, but what that is, you needn't know," Grace Flowers said, glancing at the sky outside the window, then stood up. "It's getting late. I must leave. If you have any news about the Phoenix Dragon Goblet, please inform me immediately." Martin Woods nodded slightly and instructed Lily Pearl, "See our guest out." "Yes, master." Lily Pearl nodded and softly said to Grace Flowers, "Miss, please follow me." "Oh, wait a moment." Remembering the suspended bridge, Grace Flowers' knees weakened. She asked sheepishly, "Besides that bridge, is there another way down, like stairs?" She truly didn't want to cross that bridge again. "With your impressive martial arts skills, your lightness technique must be exceptional. Perhaps you could simply leap from the window?" Martin Woods jested, but then instructed Lily Pearl, "Escort Miss Susie Green down the stairs." Grace Flowers breathed a sigh of relief, waved goodbye to Martin Woods, and followed Susie Green away from the suspended bridge. Only then did she discover stairs at the end of the corridor leading directly down. Lily Pearl escorted Grace Flowers to the door before returning. The building's entrance was located directly behind the bustling marketplace, just around the corner from the Harmony Crossroads. Grace Flowers returned to Serenity Prince Mansion before nightfall. Before she reached the main hall, she heard Susie Green and Jason Lawrence's cheerful laughter. Passing through the main hall's archway, she saw Jason Lawrence on a swing, with Susie Green pushing him. As the swing reached its highest point, they both cried out in delight. "Higher, push me higher." Jason Lawrence laughed, still not finding it thrilling enough, urging Susie Green to push harder. "Young master, I can't go any higher, it's too dangerous." Susie Green didn't dare push any harder, fearing she'd feel terrible if this precious little darling got hurt. "It's all right, I know martial arts, I won't fall." Jason Lawrence looked down at Susie Green as he spoke, then suddenly spotted Grace Flowers approaching and cried out joyfully, "Mother, mother." Ignoring the still swinging swing, Jason Lawrence let go of the chains and waved to Grace Flowers. "Young master, be careful, hold on tight." Susie Green's face paled, her voice filled with worry. "Mother, catch me." Jason Lawrence, not the least bit flustered, called out to Grace Flowers and jumped, soaring like an eagle towards her. Grace Flowers, equally unperturbed by Jason Lawrence's leap, quickened her pace and stretched out her arms to catch him. Susie Green cried out, squeezing her eyes shut. Hearing no cry of pain from Jason Lawrence, she quickly opened her eyes to see Grace Flowers holding him safely in her arms. "Young master, that was very dangerous. What if Milady hadn't caught you?" Susie Green, having regained her composure, couldn't help but scold Jason Lawrence. Susie Green, it's fine. Children need to cultivate courage to become true men later on. Grace Flowers said with a smile, looking at the little one in her arms. She affectionately patted his head and praised, "Justin, you're such a little man. But weren't you afraid I wouldn't catch you and you'd fall?" "Not afraid. I'm a little man, what's a little pain?" Jason Lawrence said with an aggrieved expression, his innocent demeanor utterly adorable. "You're truly mother's good boy." Grace Flowers affectionately kissed Jason Lawrence's small face. "Milady, this isn't right. This child is playful, but how can you, an adult, be so playful too?" Susie Green disagreed. "Not only did you not stop young master, but you even encouraged such dangerous behavior. This is truly inappropriate." Grace Flowers looked at Susie Green's exasperated face. Although Susie Green was a year younger, from her memories, perhaps because the original owner was timid and bullied since childhood, Susie Green always considered herself a protector, like a nanny, constantly nagging in the original owner's ear, telling her to be brave. It was thanks to Susie Green that the original owner, bullied and abused from a young age, didn't become withdrawn. Susie Green's devotion to the original owner was truly genuine. All right, I understand. We'll be more careful next time." Grace Flowers and Jason Lawrence exchanged glances and, while Susie Green looked away, simultaneously stuck their tongues out at her. "Mother, will this nagging Susie Green always be by our side?" Jason Lawrence whispered in Grace Flowers' ear, wrinkling his nose. "Yes, so you have to get used to it. And no playing tricks on Susie Green, understand?" Grace Flowers tweaked Jason Lawrence's little nose, giving him a warning smile. This little rascal was full of mischief, so to prevent him from pranking the straightforward Susie Green, she had to warn him in advance. "Fine, for mother's sake, I'll be polite to Nanny." Jason Lawrence sighed, looking at the still nagging Susie Green and couldn't help but pick at his ear. "Nanny? Milady, what nanny?" Susie Green asked, having overheard part of Jason Lawrence's words. "Nanny?" Grace Flowers drawled playfully, her lips curving into a mischievous smile. Watching Susie Green's growing confusion, she burst out laughing, "The nanny is you, Susie Green. Look how much you like to nag, just like a nanny, Miss Susie Green, realizing she'd been teased, blushed crimson. She couldn't help but stamp her foot, yet seeing her mistress laugh so freely and brightly, she couldn't help but laugh along. She truly adored this side of her mistress, so different from the timid miss of the past. "What's so amusing?" Cough, cough, the warm, pleasant voice of Justin Lawrence, punctuated by a light cough, came from behind them. Chapter 48, The worrying maid. The three turned to see Justin Lawrence, clad in a pale blue robe, lightly covering his mouth as he coughed. His gaze rested warmly on Grace Flowers and Jason Lawrence. "You're back." Grace Flowers, still smiling, greeted Justin Lawrence with effortless warmth. "Greetings, Your Highness." Susie Green, startled, hastily bowed to Justin Lawrence, inwardly amazed. She had assumed the third prince wore a veiled hat due to some disfigurement. Seeing him unveiled, she realized he was not disfigured at all, but rather, ethereally handsome. His refined, noble air and delicate features, though tinged with an aura of illness, did not detract from his beauty. Instead, his fragility evoked a maternal instinct, a desire to care for him and shield him from any harm. "Rise." Justin Lawrence glanced at Susie Green, replying indifferently before turning his attention back to Grace Flowers and his son. "Susie Green, why didn't you stay at Wang Ma's residence for a few days? Why rush here?" Grace Flowers inquired. She had assumed Susie Green would take a few days to rest and recover before coming to Serenity Prince Mansion. "I was worried the miss wouldn't be accustomed to being here without me, so I came directly after paying respects to my godmother," Susie Green replied. "Do you really think I have such poor adaptability?" Grace Flowers couldn't help but laugh. Susie Green truly had a motherly nature, always worrying. The miss used to be so timid, but seeing you now, I'm relieved, Susie Green said with a reassuring smile. Indeed, I'm no longer the worrying miss I once was. However, Justin here will give you plenty to worry about in the future. Grace Flowers glanced at Jason Lawrence in her arms, smiling. Susie Green was used to caring for others, it wouldn't do for her to have no one to fuss over. This little darling would be perfect for Susie Green. Mother, how could you be so wicked? Handing your obedient child over to the wolf grandmother. Jason Lawrence wailed in protest, imagining Susie Green's constant nagging presence in his future, a fate worse than death. Susie Green, Justin says you're a wolf grandmother. It seems you'll have your work cut out for you teaching this little one some manners, Grace Flowers said with a laugh. She truly is. Justin Lawrence, observing Jason Lawrence's sullen expression and Susie Green's flustered demeanor, shook his head at Grace Flowers in amusement. It seemed this young woman had a playful, teasing side to her. All right, enough teasing. Haven't you had dinner yet? Grace Flowers asked Justin Lawrence. He usually returned to dine with her, and she assumed tonight would be no different. Indeed, Justin Lawrence nodded, coughing lightly. Let's go. The servants should have dinner ready. Let's eat first. Grace Flowers nodded, set Jason Lawrence down, and walked with Justin Lawrence towards the dining room. Right, Susie Green, where are you? Has the steward made arrangements for you? Grace Flowers inquired. The steward has arranged it. I'm in the annex of the main building. The steward said it would be more convenient for me to take care of Miss if I'm closer, Susie Green replied, looking at Serenity Prince Mansion, which was even larger than the Flowers. She felt that her Miss had truly married the right person, not only into the royal family, but even the rumored sickly prince was as beautiful as a celestial being, and moreover, seemed to adore her Miss very much. That's good. You must be tired from your journey today. Go down and have dinner. You don't need to attend to me today. After dinner, rest early, Grace Flowers instructed. After all, after dinner, there was no need for anyone to attend to her. That lecherous Justin Lawrence would directly drag her to the bedroom and they wouldn't emerge until the next morning. Yes, Susie Green nodded, then bowed to Justin Lawrence and retreated. As soon as Susie Green left, Justin Lawrence's sickly complexion improved somewhat. He looked at Grace Flowers with sparkling eyes and whispered in her ear, from now on, Susie Green will only attend during the day. After dinner, she can make her own arrangements and doesn't need to attend anymore. Grace Flowers gave Justin Lawrence an annoyed sidelong glance. She naturally knew what he was planning. She's my confidante, so you don't need to pretend in front of her. Justin Lawrence smiled but said nothing, raising an eyebrow in a way that neither confirmed nor denied. By the way, does the steward know you're pretending? Grace Flowers asked curiously. Even within his own residence, he had to feign severe illness. She wondered if the steward knew Justin Lawrence's true condition. He's my man, Justin Lawrence replied. Aren't the other servants yours as well? Why the need for such precautions? Grace Flowers was stunned. She suddenly looked up at Justin Lawrence and noticed an unfathomable faint smile at the corner of his lips. He didn't answer her question. Grace Flowers frowned, feeling more and more that something was strange about this. Who was Justin Lawrence guarding against? And who sent the servants in the mansion to the prince's mansion? Could it be to monitor Justin Lawrence? So why did Justin Lawrence, knowing he was being monitored, not take action to dismiss those servants? Or could he not dismiss them? If he couldn't dismiss them, there was only one possibility: the person who arranged the servants around him must be someone of higher status. Could it be? Grace Flowers was startled. Could it be the Emperor? If her guess was correct, and the Emperor was the one who arranged these servants in Serenity Prince Mansion, then why did the Emperor arrange people within the mansion? From ancient times to the present, there was only one reason for the emperor to arrange people in a subordinate's residence: suspicion, and thus surveillance. Wasn't Justin Lawrence the emperor's most favored prince? Was this rumor true or false? The more Grace Flowers thought about it, the more tangled this relationship became, impossible to unravel. But the bolder her guesses, the more frightened she became. Was Justin Lawrence feigning illness because the emperor didn't want to give him real power and told him to feign illness as an excuse for his weakness and inability to hold power without causing public dissent, or was it Justin Lawrence himself who didn't want to hold power and thus feigned illness? While both instances involved feigning illness, their underlying reasons were entirely different. Arriving at the dining hall, Grace Flowers remained entangled in this conundrum, unable to find a way out. She ate dinner absent-mindedly, and continued to ponder the issue while soaking in the bath. Only when the water grew cold and Ruby Willow reminded her did she rise, don her nightclothes, and recline on the plush bed by the window, still lost in thought. As Ruby Willow gently dried Grace Flowers' hair with a fine silk towel, she observed her mistress's countenance, curious about what occupied her thoughts so completely throughout the evening. "My lady, your hair is dry now," Ruby Willow said softly, placing the silk towel aside after confirming the dryness. "Yes, you may retire," Grace Flowers replied distractedly, waving a hand at Ruby Willow. Ruby Willow rose, curtsied to Grace Flowers, and respectfully said, "Yes, my lady. I shall take my leave." Grace Flowers remained on the soft bed, deep in thought, feeling that a breakthrough was within reach, one that would illuminate these perplexing events. "Your Highness," Ruby Willow greeted as she reached the door. Justin Lawrence's arrival was timely. Even if he refused to disclose the truth, she could still voice her suspicions. Justin Lawrence, freshly bathed and clad in comfortable, light attire, appeared at the entrance to the inner chambers. Walking directly to the chaise lounge, Justin Lawrence sat beside Grace Flowers, leaning close to her neck and inhaling deeply. Her unique fragrance filled his senses, bringing him a sense of peace. "So fragrant," Justin Lawrence murmured, taking another breath before gently nibbling on Grace Flowers' delicate neck. "I need to speak with you." "Sit properly." Grace Flowers pushed Justin Lawrence away, sat up on the chaise lounge, and looked at him with a serious expression. Seeing her rare serious demeanor, Justin Lawrence ceased his advances. He folded his arms, leaned back against the chaise lounge, and tapped his fingers lightly on his elbow, gesturing to Grace Flowers. "All right, my little princess, what do you wish to discuss?" "About your feigning illness," Grace Flowers stated, her gaze fixed on Justin Lawrence, not missing a single flicker of expression. "I've already told you, the time isn't right to explain." "I'll tell you when the opportunity arises," Justin Lawrence replied calmly, his expression unchanged, an eyebrow raised. "Was your feigned illness for your own secret plan, due to some unspoken difficulty, or because the emperor was wary of you, prompting you to feign illness as a plausible excuse to avoid holding real power?" Grace Flowers inquired slowly, articulating her suspicions clearly. Upon hearing Grace Flowers' words, Justin Lawrence's calm facade shattered, replaced by a chilling coldness. He abruptly lunged towards her, gripping her throat, his body radiating an icy, blood-like aura. His eyes, sharp as ice shards, held no trace of warmth, and his voice was bone-chilling. "Who told you these things? Speak." Faced with Justin Lawrence's sudden, chilling transformation, Grace Flowers showed no fear, instead offering a faint smile as she gazed at him, attempting to see through his facade. His tightening grip on her throat made it difficult to breathe. "Speak. Are you even the real Grace Flowers? Did he send you to monitor me?" Seeing her fearless smile, Justin Lawrence's expression grew even colder. "You silly fool," gasp, "let go of me, I can't breathe." Grace Flowers gasped, hitting the hand still tightly gripping her throat as she glared at Justin Lawrence. Startled by Grace Flowers' glare, Justin Lawrence finally regained his senses and quickly withdrew his hand. Just now, hearing her deduction, alarm bells had rung in his head. He'd thought his meticulously crafted, years-long plan had been exposed. It was just a guess, not that I was sent by anyone. If I were someone's agent, would I tell you these things? Would I say these things to make you suspicious? Grace Flowers rubbed her neck, coughed lightly, and then reaffirmed to Justin Lawrence, the person you're talking about is the Emperor, isn't it? And he also planted his people in Prince Xian's residence as servants to monitor you. How do you know these things? Justin Lawrence stared intently at Grace Flowers. It was just a deduction, not a certainty. You said before that the housekeeper was your man. Based on that, I deduced these things from your usual clues. Grace Flowers looked directly at Justin Lawrence. But now one thing is certain, your feigning illness is definitely related to the Emperor. Justin Lawrence said nothing more, just stared intently at Grace Flowers. Grace Flowers also raised her head, her expression calm and unwavering, meeting Justin Lawrence's suspicious gaze. She was an upright and honest person, afraid of no one. Even if he had someone investigate her background, they wouldn't find anything. #### Chapter 49, Even a bad daughter-in-law must meet her mother-in-law. The two stared at each other in silence for a long moment, the air thick with unprecedented tension. Finally, Justin Lawrence looked away, the suspicion in his eyes replaced by remorse and self-reproach. He reached out to caress Grace Flowers' neck, apologetically saying, "I'm sorry, I hurt you." Grace Flowers brushed his hand away, laughing coldly, provoking him, "So? You no longer suspect me? It was my fault. Your eyes, they can't deceive anyone. I shouldn't have doubted you." Justin Lawrence reached out again to caress Grace Flowers' sparkling eyes, speaking softly. These clear eyes held honesty, spirit, and agility, but no trace of deceit. "Now, can you tell me what happened?" Grace Flowers asked. "We are husband and wife, on the same side. If His Majesty takes any action against you, like exterminating your entire family, I should be mentally prepared. You can't let me die without knowing why. That day will never come. I won't let you be in danger." Justin Lawrence's deep eyes flashed with determination. He didn't make any grand promises, but this short sentence was like an oath sworn on his life. "It seems you still don't intend to tell me the reason for all this?" Grace Flowers was so helpless she almost wanted to throw her head back and wail. How unlucky. She had offered her almost broken neck to pry out the truth, and in the end, she gained nothing. Was this Justin Lawrence born with a sealed mouth? No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't pry it open. It was truly discouraging. "Tomorrow, I will take you to the palace," Justin Lawrence suddenly said. "What?" Grace Flowers was stunned. "To the palace? Do you want to go to the palace to explain everything to His Majesty? You're overthinking it. I'm taking you to the palace to meet my mother." Justin Lawrence was defeated by Grace Flowers' extraordinary imagination and couldn't help but laugh. Why? Grace Flowers was full of questions. She had never heard Justin Lawrence mention his mother before. She had assumed his mother was no longer alive, as she hadn't even attended their wedding. Even a bad daughter-in-law has to meet her mother-in-law, little lass. Are you scared? Justin Lawrence gazed intently at this small, thoughtful, and sharp woman. He felt fortunate to have met such an intelligent, insightful, and extraordinary woman. Heaven had been kind to him. What do I have to be afraid of? A beloved daughter-in-law like me, only a difficult, slightly morbid mother-in-law wouldn't like. Grace Flowers snorted coldly, unaware that she hadn't intended to enter the palace and get involved in Justin Lawrence's complex relationships, but had been inadvertently dragged in by him. Good, my little princess consort is so confident. Tomorrow, we will go see my mother. Justin Lawrence smiled. Fine, let's go. Who's afraid of who? Grace Flowers replied without hesitation. As soon as she finished speaking, she realized what she had agreed to and couldn't help but slap her head. Damn it, she was such a pig brain. She clearly hadn't intended to go, but now she had said it out loud. And all of this was due to Justin Lawrence's cunning scheme. Grace Flowers couldn't help but glare at Justin Lawrence, who was laughing heartily. "Little lass, it's getting late. We should go to sleep." Justin Lawrence rose from the settee, bent down, and lifted the petite Grace Flowers, carrying her towards the bed. As soon as he placed Grace Flowers on the bed, he leaned over her, his long, slender fingers quickly undressing her. "I'm very tired today. I want to rest." Grace Flowers said this every day in protest, but Justin Lawrence never paid attention to these words, continuing to undress her as usual. Justin Lawrence waved his hand, and the bed curtains automatically fell, concealing the spring scene on the bed. The night was long, and the world of the newlyweds was always filled with rosy hues. The sky was clear and sunny, and the warm sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the pale purple bed curtains, casting a mystical purple glow. Inside the curtains, Grace Flowers lay face down on Justin Lawrence's chest, pillowed on his arm, sleeping soundly. Her steady breathing brushed against his bare chest, filling him with a sense of happiness. Gazing tenderly and affectionately at Grace Flowers, Justin Lawrence reached out and gently stroked her small, flushed face, a gentle smile playing on his lips. He wanted to hold her like this, sleep together, forever like this, until heaven and earth merged. "Little lass, you are mine. You will never escape." Stroking her soft face, Justin Lawrence silently vowed. Feeling something on her face, Grace Flowers opened her eyes slightly and looked into his loving eyes, dazed for a few seconds. Suddenly, she remembered that today she had to go to the palace to meet Justin Lawrence's mother, her mother-in-law. "Oh, didn't you say we were going to the palace today? Why are you already up and didn't wake me? Are we not going today?" By the end of her question, Grace Flowers' face showed a hopeful expression. "It would be best if they didn't go. I wanted you to sleep a little longer. Now that you're awake, get up. Going to the palace is a certainty. I want to take you to meet my mother, to reassure her that her son has married a good wife." Justin Lawrence spoke gently. He was taking this woman, whom he had acknowledged, to meet the woman he respected most. The thought of it filled him with contentment. "All right, then hurry up and get up. Trinee must be waiting outside." Grace Flowers reluctantly nodded. It seemed that a trip to the palace was unavoidable. She resigned herself to getting out of bed, hugging the blanket. Seeing that Justin Lawrence was still lying there, she couldn't help but kick him with her foot. "Little lass, where are you kicking?" Justin Lawrence's expression suddenly changed slightly. He took a deep breath, his eyes deepening. He inhaled deeply, suppressing the desire ignited by Grace Flowers. Jade foot, his gaze burning as he looked at the small woman hiding behind the blanket, only her eyes visible. "Hey, get up. I'll call Trinee in. Do you want Trinee to help you dress?" Grace Flowers looked at Justin Lawrence anxiously, afraid he would pounce on her for another round of tumbling. "I'll make it up to you tonight." Justin Lawrence sat up, quickly got out of bed, and dressed quickly before leaving the bedroom. Grace Flowers couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. She wondered if this lecherous fellow had gone to splash cold water on himself to cool down. She had heard that men were often impulsive in the morning, and she had just ignited his impulsiveness. TSK, guilty, so guilty. Your Highness. Trinee and Ruby Willow's voices came from outside. Help the princess consort change her clothes. Dress her formally and apply her makeup carefully. I want to take the princess consort to the palace. Don't be disrespectful. Justin Lawrence instructed. Yes, Your Highness. Trinee and Ruby Willow hurriedly agreed. As soon as Justin Lawrence left, they immediately pushed the door open and entered. Trinee entered the inner room first and saw Grace Flowers still sitting on the bed, hugging the blanket. She hurriedly urged, Miss, hurry up and get up. His Highness said he wants to take you to the palace. You must dress and put on makeup properly. Princess consort, which palace dress should we choose? Ruby Willow went to the wardrobe, opened the door, and looked at the gorgeous clothes inside, unsure which one to choose, so she asked. Whatever. Grace Flowers put on her undergarments and replied indifferently. She was a beauty, she would look radiant in anything. Miss, how can it be whatever? It's your first time entering the palace. You must dress formally. As His Highness said, we can't be disrespectful. Triney disagreed and went to Ruby Willow's side, carefully examining each of the gorgeous and beautiful palace dresses. Which one did Miss wear before that looked good? Triney asked Ruby Willow. The princess consort has always worn simple clothes and has never worn these palace dresses. Ruby Willow found this strange princess consort very puzzling. Which woman didn't like gorgeous clothes? Only her princess consort preferred simple attire and had never even glanced at these beautiful palace dresses that would make any woman's heart flutter at first sight. Go with this red wedding gown, Mississippi. As the bride, red brings good fortune, and this one looks quite formal. Triney searched high and low, only satisfied with that red gown, and asked Grace Flowers, who was sitting at the dressing table getting her hair done, Miss, is this gown all right? Yes, bring it here. Grace Flowers replied casually without turning around. Ruby Willow and Triney felt helpless at Grace Flowers' lack of interest in entering the palace. They looked at each other, shook their heads, and sighed. Their mistress didn't care, only they, as servants, did. Miss, this is the one then. Hurry up and put it on. Triney decisively took the bright red gown from the wardrobe and called to Grace Flowers. Wait a moment, let me finish my hair. Grace Flowers casually tied up her hair before standing up. In Triney's hands was a gorgeous yet formal gown with a repeating pattern. The silk ribbon bows at the collar and sleeves added a touch of liveliness, preventing it from appearing too old-fashioned despite its formality. Grace Flowers nodded in satisfaction. Triney's eye was good, this gown suited her temperament well. After Grace Flowers put on the gown, both Triney and Ruby Willow couldn't help but stare at her in a daze. What? Isn't it beautiful? Grace Flowers twirled, the long skirt dragging on the floor, making her want to grab scissors and cut it. Your Highness, you're so beautiful. Ruby Willow couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. She was already beautiful in ordinary dresses, but now, in this gown, her noble elegance and dignified demeanor were even more apparent. Clad in bright red, she was so noble and beautiful that it was impossible to look away. I knew this gown would suit you, Mississippi. Look, how beautiful. You'll definitely outshine all the other consorts in the palace. Triney's face was full of pride. She knew her mistress could transform into a butterfly, no, not a butterfly, but a noble phoenix. Triney, let's keep this between ourselves. If others hear it, it'll cause trouble for His Highness and Her Highness. Ruby Willow hurriedly stopped her in a low voice. Daring to say that the consorts couldn't compare to the princess was like saying the emperor had poor judgment, which was disrespectful and could cause trouble. Ruby Willow is right, Triney. In the future, try not to comment on matters concerning the people and affairs of the palace. Grace Flowers looked at Ruby Willow and asked, Ruby Willow, how did you come to the HGN estate? Did the steward bring you in? Yes, Mississippi. At that time, our hometown was flooded, and almost all the villagers had to leave to find food. After I lost my parents, no one would give me food, so I wandered aimlessly. I don't know how I ended up on the road in front of the estate. I was so hungry that I fainted. The kind guards brought me back to the estate, and the steward, seeing that I had nowhere to go, kindly kept me. Ruby Willow recounted the details, her face full of gratitude towards the steward. So, Ruby Willow wasn't sent by the emperor. No wonder the steward assigned her to be her personal maid. Grace Flowers still didn't understand. Wasn't Justin Lawrence the emperor's son? What kind of conflict could there be between father and son that the father had to send someone to the estate to monitor? ####. Chapter 50, Entering the palace to meet the mother-in-law. While Grace Flowers was lost in thought, Susie Green noticed her hair bun and exclaimed, "Miss, your hair is too simple, let me redo it for you." Susie Green pulled Grace Flowers to sit in front of the dressing table. Looking in the mirror, seeing herself in formal palace attire, the simple bun indeed didn't match the clothes. Grace Flowers didn't object, letting Susie Green undo her hair. "Don't make it too heavy, and don't use too many hairpins, it'll be a headache." Grace Flowers saw Ruby Willow carrying a tray full of hairpins, instinctively rubbed her forehead, and quickly instructed. "Don't worry, miss, I'll make sure it's both beautiful and light." Susie Green smiled, knowing her mistress had never had fine clothes growing up, only hand-me-downs from the other misses. Fortunately, her mistress was often underfed and bullied, so she was smaller than her peers. The other misses, though younger, their clothes still fit, so her mistress never had the chance to dress up, only requiring clothes to be warm enough. "Susie Green, I know how to style palace hair buns, how about I do it for the princess consort?" Ruby Willow, seeing Susie Green seemed unsure, spoke up. "All right, then please style a beautiful and light bun for the Mississippi." Susie Green sighed in relief. Since childhood, she had only styled simple buns for her mistress. Styling a complex palace bun now was truly difficult for her. Thankfully, there was Ruby Willow. Ruby Willow's nimble fingers quickly styled an elegant yet light bun, selecting a gold hairpin with a red gemstone and placing it in the hair. "Done." Ruby Willow put down the comb, satisfied with her work. "Wow, so beautiful. I used to think the noble ladies and rich misses looked beautiful with hair full of pins, but now I see the misses' hair only needs one gold hairpin to look stunning." Susie Green praised, seeing it was both pleasing to the eye and appropriately formal. "Yes, let's go with this, it's good." Grace Flowers looked in the mirror, nodding in satisfaction. Ruby Willow's skill was truly deft, shaking her head, the bun felt neither too loose nor too tight, perfectly comfortable. "We still need light makeup." Ruby Willow took out the cosmetics, applying them to Grace Flowers' face for a while. In less than 10 minutes, she stopped, carefully examined the makeup, then put down the tools and softly said, "Done." "Perfect." Susie Green looked at Ruby Willow with admiration. "Could you teach me how to do hair later?" "If both of us know, then if you're busy, I can help the Mississippi." "Of course, if you want to learn, I can teach you everything I know." Ruby Willow happily agreed. "You two, you just met yesterday, and you're already so close." Grace Flowers smiled, teasingly watching Susie Green and Ruby Willow act like sisters. Since childhood, Susie Green had served her predecessor, having little contact with peers. Previously in the Green language courtyard, the servants were all older, like Mama Wong and Uncle Lee, rarely having a friend of the same age. Susie Green was truly happy. "That's only natural, Mississippi. The moment I saw Ruby Willow, I felt a connection between us." Susie Green giggled, helping Grace Flowers up. "Miss, you should have your breakfast. After breakfast, we must go to the palace." The emperor isn't in a hurry, but the eunuch is." "It's just going to the palace, brother, you're even more anxious than I am." Grace Flowers chuckled and walked out the door. After finishing breakfast, she boarded the carriage, swaying towards the imperial palace. Sitting in the carriage, Justin Lawrence gazed at Grace Flowers, his lips curved in a smile of both satisfaction and pride. "Since breakfast, brother, have you still not recovered from my stunning beauty?" Grace Flowers tilted her chin, teasing Justin Lawrence. "My princess consort is so beautiful, I fear I'll be lost in her stunning beauty for the rest of my life, unable to recover." Justin Lawrence chuckled. This little lass, her level of self-love was truly astounding. "Oh my, I didn't expect our third prince to be so skilled at sweet-talking." Grace Flowers raised an eyebrow, moving closer to Justin Lawrence. It seems, brother, you've dabbled with quite a few women, haven't you? It's all become experience now. Don't worry about that, princess consort. Absolutely no other women will come knocking. I've always kept myself pure. Justin Lawrence chuckled softly, gently pinching Grace Flowers's cute nose, his eyes filled with gentle affection. Tisk, it's all right. A few more women coming to the door would be good. At least it could lessen the burden on me. Grace Flowers glanced down at Justin Lawrence's lower abdomen. Being tormented every night until midnight, she felt she would die from exhaustion. Are you trying to push your husband onto other women? A dangerous look flashed across Justin Lawrence's face as he embraced Grace Flowers's slender waist, made even smaller by the palace attire. Why not? So, you better be obedient from now on. Otherwise, I won't hesitate to give you away to another woman. Grace Flowers pouted. Men, to her, were optional. Even a devastatingly handsome man like Justin Lawrence couldn't guarantee her complete devotion. You heartless little thing. Justin Lawrence sighed, yet he felt more at ease than ever before. Chatting so casually with a woman he cared for, he realized that only after Grace Flowers appeared could he truly relax like this. By the way, how far is it to the Imperial Palace? How long will it take by carriage? Grace Flowers truly disliked riding in carriages. If they went fast, it was bumpy, and if they went slow, it was smooth, but the speed was agonizingly slow. Soon, less than half a watch and we'll be there. Justin Lawrence smiled. He knew this little lass didn't like riding in carriages, complaining of backaches and knee pains every time. He had even added an extra layer of soft padding to the seat to make her more comfortable. That's still a long time. Grace Flowers sighed. Half a watch was still an hour. Sitting for an hour was truly not a short period. Just bear with it a little longer, and we'll be there. Justin Lawrence comforted her, then turned to instruct the guard outside, go a little faster. Yes, Your Highness. The guard nodded and increased the speed, heading forward. Fortunately, traveling on the official road, though swift, wasn't overly bumpy. Just as Grace Flowers stretched for the 30th time, the carriage slowed. Your Highness, we've arrived, the guard announced to Justin Lawrence, halting the carriage. Can our carriage go straight into the Imperial Palace? Grace Flowers inquired. Aren't officials and princes usually not permitted to drive their carriages inside? Go directly to Virtue Palace, Justin Lawrence calmly instructed the guard, then parted the carriage curtains and addressed the palace guards at the gate. Open the gates. Recognizing Justin Lawrence, the palace guards promptly opened the archway, allowing the carriage to enter without checking for other occupants. Once inside the palace gates, Justin Lawrence turned to Grace Flowers and explained, His Majesty has decreed that I may enter the palace without disembarking, allowing the carriage to proceed directly inside. Grace Flowers was astonished. This was a rare privilege, likely reserved for those deeply trusted and favored. But why would the Emperor place his own man in Serenity Prince Mansion? Could her guess be wrong? Was it not suspicion towards Justin Lawrence, but something else entirely? Grace Flowers felt her mind tangled once more. Deciding to set the matter aside for now, she adjusted her attire and thought about meeting Justin Lawrence's mother, a prospect that made her slightly nervous. Don't worry, Mother is kind. She won't bite, Justin Lawrence reassured her with a smile, noticing her tension. Easy for you to say. Would you be relaxed meeting my mother? Grace Flowers muttered. Everyone knew meeting one's mother-in-law was nerve-wracking. What? Justin Lawrence hadn't heard her clearly and leaned closer. Nothing, Grace Flowers quickly waved her hand. She'd misspoken. In her current identity as the original owner of this body, her mother was long deceased. Asking Justin Lawrence to meet her mother would be like asking him to meet the king of hell. Heaven and earth could bear witness, she meant no such curse of early death upon him. The carriage continued for another quarter of an hour before stopping. Your Highness, we've arrived at Virtue Palace, the guard announced from outside. Yes, let's disembark, Justin Lawrence replied, his previous alertness vanishing, replaced by an air of frail illness. Must you feign illness even before your own mother? Grace Flowers asked softly. Surely there was no need to hide from one's own parent. Come, let's get down, Justin Lawrence responded with a smile and a light cough, avoiding her question. He parted the curtains and, supported by a guard, stepped out with unsteady steps. Grace Flowers sighed in resignation and followed him out. They had entered Virtue Palace, the carriage had stopped directly before the main hall. Ah, Your Highness has arrived. Quickly informed the noble consort. A palace maid exclaimed upon seeing Justin Lawrence, immediately instructing another maid to make the announcement. She then rushed forward and bowed. Your Highness. Cough, cough. You may rise. Where is Mother? Justin Lawrence asked gently, raising a hand to his mouth. Virtue Consort is praying in the Buddhist hall. I have sent someone to inform her ladyship, the maid replied respectfully. Lead me to the Buddhist hall, Justin Lawrence commanded. Yes, Your Highness, please follow me. The palace maid nodded. Grace Flowers pretended to support Justin Lawrence, discreetly observing the Shwanda Palace, indeed magnificent and imposing. Following the palace maid along the corridor, towards the end, a faint scent of incense drifted, suggesting they were nearing the Buddhist hall. Suddenly, a door not far away opened, and a beautiful woman in white appeared at the entrance. Your Majesty, please walk slowly. A middle-aged palace maid appeared beside the beautiful woman, cautioning her. Grace Flowers, observing the beautiful woman who looked to be in her early 30s, and hearing the middle-aged palace maid address her as, Your Majesty, surmised she must be Justin Lawrence's mother, but couldn't help but be stunned. This woman looked so young, at most like Justin Lawrence's older sister, yet she was his mother. Chapter 51, Virtue Consort, observing Justin Lawrence approaching, offered a gentle smile, her beautiful face radiating serenity. Justin Lawrence, reaching her side, addressed her, Mother. Come in quickly, the wind is strong outside, be careful not to catch a cold. Virtue Consort, taking Justin Lawrence's hand, instructed the guiding court lady, You may leave. Yes, Your Highness. The court lady bowed slightly and withdrew. Accompanying Virtue Consort and Justin Lawrence into the Buddhist hall, the middle-aged court lady then securely closed the doors. Inside, incense smoke filled the air, permeating the space with a calming fragrance. The hall, though large, was simple, furnished only with an altar holding a Buddha statue, flanked by 2 incense burners brimming with burning incense sticks. Before the altar lay several cushions for kneeling worshippers. Along the wall were a few stools and a tea table, upon which sat a simple tea set. Siener, come sit here. It's been so long since you visited your mother in the palace, you've worried me greatly.